I'm going to plug this really quick while we're doing this hype train. I just made a new Patreon. Allow me to go through it. No obligation to actually get into it. Okay. To be honest, do you say you're based at all? Biased? Everybody has a bias. I try to be as unbiased as possible. So I have a Patreon, patreon.com/PapaGut. Patreon in the chat can allow you to get to there. ! Patreon.
Papa, can we sword fight? I promise I won't cheat.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so this is just another way to support me. Frankly, I get more support from this than I would from like Twitch or anything. I'm not saying, you guys, if you even decide to donate, which you have no obligation to do so, you do it however you want. I appreciate it in general, but I think this gives you a little more bang for your buck here. $5 on Twitch doesn't get you a whole lot. $5, well, $2 on here alone gets you access to my Patreon. Just like it's basically a blog. I talk about lifting stuff and whatnot. For $5, you get that. Plus, I'm going to start doing offline content, like going through The Mandalorian. This will get you access to be able to watch that live. It also gives you voting power on what you want me to do. Who do you want me to talk to? You can vote on if you want me to do with different people on a podcast. For $10, you get all that, plus my forbidden TikToks that you're either taken down or I haven't posted yet. I know you guys saw my drafts with 255 people. And lastly, the biggest one gets you all this, plus a mention at the end of every one of my YouTube videos. So, figured I'd throw it out there. Just wanted to plug it real quick. Again, no obligation. You don't have to do it. I've already put a little bit of content on there. I've put a couple of forbidden TikToks up on there. So just wanted to throw it out there for you guys. So here we go.
It is my honor to moderate this debate, an important part of our democracy.
I agree.
In Kingsbury
Fringe
Hall
CNN,
tonight, we have a small and socially distant
now,
audience.
right off the bat, we noticed that they have put up this bulletproof glass here, and we can only assume it's because Kamala Harris is a Black American woman. I find it to be very racist, and it's messed up, man. I can't believe that.
Extra precautions during this pandemic. Among other things, everyone in the audience is required to wear a face mask, and the candidates will be seated 12 feet apart.
Well, it's funny because like Trump's team would refuse to wear one, but it looks like everybody's actually wearing them.
The audience is enthusiastic about their candidates, but they've agreed to express that enthusiasm only twice.
Okay.
At the end of the debate, and now when I introduce the candidates.
Fantastic.
Please welcome California Senator Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence.
Yeah, everybody clap. Yay! Everybody keeps saying that. Everybody keeps saying Kamala Harris isn't black, but like she says that she's black. I mean, am I supposed to just not take her word for it? I'm so confused.
Thank you.
Hey, they're not even going to shake hands? How disrespectful.
Senator Harris and Vice President Pence, thank you for being here. We're meeting as President Trump and the First Lady continue to undergo treatment in Washington after testing positive for COVID-19. We send our thoughts and prayers to them for their rapid and complete recovery and for the recovery of everyone afflicted by the coronavirus. The two campaigns and the Commission on Presidential Debates have agreed to the ground rules for tonight. I'm
What are
here
those?
to enforce them on behalf of the millions of Americans who are watching.
Yeah,
One
right.
note, no one in either campaign or at the commission or anywhere else has been told in advance what topics I'll raise or what questions I'll ask. This 90-minute debate will be divided into 9 segments of about 10 minutes each. I'll begin a segment by posing a question to each of you, sometimes the same question, sometimes a different question.
You know what's interesting about that? I know this is silly, but it's like, hey, you got 90 minutes, 9 topics. That's 10 minutes a topic, and they give them 2 minutes each. So it's like, it's just so silly. Like we play this game like, hey, don't interrupt. Let's get through everything. But like, that's not even set up for. Like we're just like, yeah, make sure you guys talk over each other because it's entertaining. And that's what the motivator is, right? It's just silly.
On the same
It's just like a fucking
You will then
charade.
have 2 minutes to answer
Is that what you call it?
without
Charade?
interruption by
Charade?
me or the
I don't
other
know.
candidate. Then we'll
Yeah,
take
right.
6 minutes or so to discuss the issue. At that point, although there will always be more to say, we'll move on to the next topic. We want a debate that is lively, but Americans also deserve a discussion that is civil. These are tumultuous times, but we can and will have a respectful exchange about the big issues facing our nation.
Big kisses.
Let's begin with the ongoing pandemic that has cost our country so much.
I photographed
What the
in
fuck, CNN?
New York and Philadelphia and Paris. DocuSign makes it
Shut
easier
the fuck up. All right, back
Senator
to the
Harris, the
content.
coronavirus is not under control. Over the past week, Johns Hopkins reports that 39 states have had more COVID cases over the past 7 days than in the week before. 9 states have set new records. Even if a vaccine is released soon, the next administration will face hard choices. What would a Biden administration do in January and February that a Trump administration wouldn't do? Would you impose new lockdowns for businesses and schools and hotspots? A federal mandate to wear masks? You have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Let's do it, baby.
Well, the American people
Wait,
have...
can we just establish, like, you saw them both writing down? I didn't see Trump or Biden write anything down a singular fucking time. Like, the two of them are like, okay, let me, like, actually, well, they're suggesting they're going to actually respond to what's going on.
witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country.
I don't know about that one, man. Like, it was mismanaged. Let's just be, like, completely honest. It was mismanaged. Trump, doing his best to shut down the country, well, shut down movement from China and whatnot. That was a solid move, right? We were never going to stop the coronavirus. It was just something about slowing it until we had the infrastructure to, like, deal with it. But he did, I think, fail when he didn't force close enough. And he tried to force... He's like, right, so he was like, I'm not going to forcefully close. It's up to the states. And then he tried to force the states back open. Those were two of his failures. I think his biggest failure wasn't that he downplayed at the beginning, because I understand why he would, like, downplay it a little bit at the beginning to try to calm tensions, because there was nothing we could do. But as the infrastructure came out, he really never said, like, hey, he stopped enforcing the idea of, like, wear a mask, and which is huge. Like, we could have done, like, hey, wear a mask, wash your goddamn hands, sing happy birthday under the sink while you rub your hands together. But, like, no, he's like, that's not a big deal. We can open up economy. And I understand the idea that money rules the world, but there has to be some times where we go, you know what? People matter first. Let's figure out how we can do this the right way, rather than say it's not a big deal at all. You understand? Because we could have opened up slowly while saying, hey, wear a mask. But you see places like Florida with, like, doing terribly. Nobody's wearing a goddamn mask.
And here are the facts. 210,000 dead people in our country in just the last several months. Over 7 million people who have contracted this disease. 1 in 5 businesses closed. We're looking at frontline workers who have been treated like sacrificial workers.
What? I don't know what the fuck.
We are looking at over 30 million people who in the last several months had to file for unemployment. And here's the thing.
But, like, listen, not for nothing, but, like, we were going so if let's say Biden was president, right? He probably wouldn't have shut down any movement, because he called it xenophobic. Whatever. He probably would, but he would have probably done, like, huge regulations. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Totally great. Honestly, fine. A couple things. First and foremost, blue states would have listened. Red states probably wouldn't have. Just being honest. So we would have seen similar numbers. We have to understand that there is individualized, individual choice. Also, but Biden wouldn't have downplayed it in the toxic way that Trump did, for sure. But it still was going to spread. And to the point of the economy, it would have shut down much harder. Even Trump is even getting a lot of, like, positive, well, not enough positive feedback probably, but he's getting, positive feedback because his reopening of the economy and his progression back to normal is faster than economists expected. And, like, nobody's really talking about it enough.
On January 28th, the vice president and the president were informed about the nature of this pandemic.
They shut down movement from China, and Democrats were like, oh, that's racist, it's xenophobic. Again, anything to slow this down is what we needed to do. It may not sound nice. It may be, like, a non-politically correct, but, like, the coronavirus doesn't give a fuck about identity politics.
We're informed that it's lethal in consequence, that it is airborne, that it
Somebody made a point that if we kept the economy closed for too long, it could have been like, created problems. For sure, there's some aspects of the economy that like are absolutely, yeah, they're necessary. But let's keep in mind that we could have done some form of like universal basic income for at least a period of time to make sure people had money, while requiring people to go back to work that were absolutely necessary. Grocery stores. I would say like kind of fast food workers, because Americans are lazy pieces of shit. Like maybe buses, or rather cleaners. You understand my point?
it will affect young people, and that it would be contracted because it is airborne.
Just to that point, I believe the airborne nature of it, it's like 6 feet airborne. So I'm just like, she's not necessarily wrong. Just felt the need to contextualize that.
And they knew what was happening, and they didn't tell you. Can you imagine if you knew on January 28th, as opposed to March 13th, what they knew, what you might have done to prepare? They knew, and they covered it up.
Well, China covered it up. I don't know that I'd call it a cover-up per se. I would say that like it was a downplay because we needed to create the infrastructure to handle this. Like again, like it's not just Trump. Like the CDC came out and said masks weren't effective, while hospitals were buying up as many masks as possible. Right? They lied to the American people. Honestly, they lied to the American people to make sure that the hospitals had more masks availability. Fine, I guess, but it's still gross. And you could have told the American people, hey, listen, we need to save masks for hospital. Put a fucking bandana on.
The president said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness of it. The president said, you're on one side of his ledger if you wear a mask, you're on the other side of his ledger.
I'd say that's more, that was more as time went on. Trump got annoyed because he's kind of a baby boy.
They still don't have a plan. Well, Joe Biden does. And our plan is about what we need to do around a national strategy for contact tracing, for testing, for administration of the vaccine, and making sure that it will be free for all. That is the plan that Joe Biden has and that I have, knowing that we have to get a hold of what has been going on, and we need to save our country. And Joe Biden is the best leader to do that. And frankly, this administration has forfeited their right to re-election based on this.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
We get a little bit of we're starting to go over our time.
More than 210,000 Americans have died of COVID-19 since February. The U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population is higher than that of almost every other wealthy nation on Earth. For instance, our death rate is 2.5 times that of Canada next door. You head the administration's coronavirus task force. Why is the U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population higher than that of almost every other wealthy country? And you have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
So, like, first and foremost, there's absolutely a factor of the way that Donald Trump played it. Not going to ignore it. But let's keep in mind that, like, the United States is very much like a center of trade, especially New York, for like the fucking world. So like we definitely could have managed it better. Trump deserves shit for not managing as well as he could have. But again, we're a fucking trade hub. We were going to see big numbers regardless. Just letting you guys know. Okay? It was going to happen regardless. So that's why it's worse for us, but not Canada, because it goes through us first. Okay?
Susan, thank you. And I want to thank the Commission and the University of Utah for hosting this event. And Senator Harris, it's a privilege to be on the stage with you.
Answer the question, dog.
And our nation has gone through a very challenging time this year. But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first.
Maybe not. He uses, maybe not.
There were more than 5 cases in the United States, all people who had returned from China. President Donald Trump did what no other American president had ever done. And that was he suspended all travel from China, the second largest economy in the world.
I agree with that. That's a good point. That's a good thing to do. I think that they should have done it to Europe too. I don't know if they had or tried or they did. I'm a dumb old piece of shit. The thing is, again, like we're trying to slow the progress. There's no way we were ever going to stop the coronavirus from getting here. It was about slowing progress as we met with the required infrastructure to do so.
Now, Senator Joe Biden opposed that decision. He said it was xenophobic and hysterical. But I can tell you, having led
In context, that was like a tweet, and we're like, Trump had made the point of shutting down, and also he's called it the Chinese virus again. So that's Biden was calling it xenophobic. He never explicitly said which one he was referring to because it was the same tweet. But like, you know, since he didn't differentiate it, we could only assume that he thought it was xenophobic to shut down.
the White House Coronavirus Task Force, that decision alone by President Trump bought us invaluable time to stand up the greatest national mobilization since
true.
World War II. And I believe it saved hundreds of thousands of American lives. Because with that time, we were able to reinvent testing. More than 115 million tests have been done to date. We were able to see to the delivery of billions of supplies so our doctors and nurses had the resource and support they needed.
It's fair.
And we began really before the month of February was out to develop a vaccine and to develop medicines and therapeutics that have been saving lives all along the way. And under President Trump's leadership, Operation Warp Speed, we believe we'll have literally tens of millions of doses of a vaccine before the end of this year.
Just so we know, just first of all, that's a belief that's not substantiated by like actual fucking doctors. You know, so or like the companies themselves. But like, listen, outside of that stuff, the beginning aspect of it, like, oh, whatever, Trump did fine, whatever. He could have done better. But like any president would be doing this current like warp speed. Like we would be trying to get this shit out as fast as possible.
The reality is, when you look at the Biden plan, it reads an awful lot like what President Trump and I and our task force have been doing.
Somebody said, why didn't the U.S. do a national lockdown like Italy and other countries did? You have to understand that like Italy got ravaged, I'm pretty sure, but also like it's kind of like they're not a trade hub. Like if we shut down all trade, like that'll have a massive not even from economic perspective, but like just from the perspective of actually getting supplies and products to different people, right? Like I understand that like money shouldn't come first, but like we have to understand that like money is value, like a goods exchanging of goods. So it's like if we're not shipping food from this country to that country, people aren't going to eat. And like we're one of the only countries in the world that could be self-sufficient and like live within ourselves from a food perspective.
Step of the way. I mean, quite frankly, when I look at their plan that talks about advancing testing, creating new PPE, developing a vaccine, it looks a little bit like plagiarism, which is something Joe Biden knows a little bit about.
I don't know why that part,
the American people
but it's
know
funny.
that this is a president who has put the
What does that
America
mean, though?
first, and the American people, I believe with my heart, can be
Thank you,
proud
Vice
of the
President.
sacrifices they have made. It's saved
Thank you,
countless
Vice
American
President.
lives.
Senator Harris.
I guess Biden used to have a plagiarism problem. Is that true? Blah, 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 blah. Joe Biden come up with the slogan, "The United States." Okay, whatever. So it's like some stuff. Who cares?
Absolutely. Whatever the vice president is claiming the administration has done, clearly it hasn't worked. When you're looking at over 210,000 dead bodies in our country,
Again, I think
American
that would
lives that have been
see
lost.
it's like it's so unfortunate because like we're talking about American lives and like as like a bargaining chip for who should win the fucking presidency. And like it's unfortunate because yeah, like again, I'm going to keep asserting that Trump could have handled it much better. But people were going to die, and apparently it was estimated that we would have hit around this number regardless. You know? So it's like it's just uncomfortable when we constantly weaponize death like that.
Lost families that are grieving that loss. And you know, the vice president is the head of the task force and knew on January 28th how serious this was. And then
Right, but then they shut down in like the next week, right? To China.
thanks to Bob Woodward.
And no offense, but China knew about this like before December, from my understanding, and they were suppressing the shit out of it. I think a bigger criticism is that Trump was like, "Yay, China's doing pretty well," when that was kind of like an issue.
We learned that they knew about it. And then when that was exposed, the vice president said, when asked, well, why didn't y'all tell anybody? He said, because the president wanted people to remain calm.
Well, let's
So
get
I mean, like now we're getting into this whole like criticism of like, you know, the government should or shouldn't do things without the people knowing, which I agree they shouldn't do things without people knowing, but like let's not pretend like this isn't something that's happens all the time, right? You know? So him wanting to downplay it, it's fucked up, especially with the CDC lying to us, but like that's normal kind of. and like you're engaged in the government, so like you do the same shit in some capacity, I'm sure. And like you're trying to make it seem like there's some kind of weird, like it's exclusively Trump who's effectively promoting these weird conspiracies when they come to it.
No, but Susan, this is important.
Susan,
I want to
have
add,
to
but
weigh in
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
I have to
I'm
weigh
speaking.
Why is she being so unnecessarily aggressive? He's just like, hey, I'd like to weigh in here, and she's like, It's just rude, right? He's not doing that to her. He's not being, I'm speaking, right? I wouldn't really call this an interrupt. This was like kind of a weird pause break, and he's just like, I'd like to weigh in. My left eye is really bloodshot.
Yeah, you
So
can have
I
15 more
wanna-
seconds,
And then he doesn't even interrupt her, you know? That's rather respectful, no?
and then we'll give the Vice President
Thank
a
you.
chance to
So I
respond.
want to ask the American people, how calm were you when you were
And he was even like, Susan, I'd like to weigh in.
panicked about where you're going to get your next roll of toilet paper? How calm were you?
But like, so here's the thing, right? Like, we just criticized President Trump for downplaying it, and now she's gonna go in on a whole tangent about, weren't you worried about having toilet paper? Yeah, motherfucker. You know why? Because people went out and bought it due to mass hysteria. So like, you're literally just contradicting yourself.
When your kids were sent home from school and you didn't know when they could go back, how calm
Thank
were
you.
you
What do you mean? Come on.
Thank
when
you,
your
Senator
children
Harris.
couldn't see your parents because you were afraid they could kill them?
That was going to happen.
Let's give Vice President Pence a chance to respond. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute to respond.
You know, there's not a day gone by that I haven't thought of every American family that's lost a loved one. And I want all of you to know that you'll always be in our hearts and in our prayers. But when you say what the American people have done over these last 8 months hasn't worked, that's a great disservice to the sacrifices the American people have made.
I'm referring
The
to you,
reality,
the
if I may finish, Senator, the reality.
Okay, so look, listen, okay? She said, I'm speaking. And he said, if I may finish. We've already seen the two different expressions, okay? If he acted as rude to her as she did to him when when they were interrupting each other, you get what I'm saying? All of a sudden, he would have been like this big, rude dickhead, like, oh my God. But like, she's able to kind of get away with it. And no one's like, oh, you're kind of rude, dog.
The reality is, Dr. Fauci said, everything that he told the president in the Oval Office, the president told the American people. Now, President Trump, I will tell you, has boundless confidence in the American people, and he always spoke with confidence that we'd get through this together. But when you say it hasn't worked,
She's so pissed.
when Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx and our medical
It's fun
experts
to
came
watch.
to us in the second week of March, they said if the president didn't take the unprecedented step of shutting down roughly half of the American economy, that we could lose 2.2 million Americans. Now, that's the reality.
Thank you.
They also
Thank you,
said
Vice
to us, if
President
we
Pence.
Well, is that not, like, she's shaking her head no. Is her contestant going to be like, no, he never said that? Because if he did say that, then that means that that step was necessary. And considering Joe Biden called it xenophobic, we can only assume that, like, he wouldn't have done that, right?
did everything right, Susan, we could still lose more than 200,000 Americans.
Vice
Now,
President
one
Pence.
life lost is too
Thank you.
many, Susan.
All right, now you're going on.
But the American
blah, blah,
people,
blah.
I believe, deserve credit for the sacrifice.
See, this is where we're going. It's like, Susan, shut him the fuck up. All right, say, hey, excuse me, Mr. Pence, shut up.
Sacrifices that they have made, putting the
Shut
health
the
of their
hell
family
up.
and
Blah,
their
blah,
neighbors
blah, blah,
first,
blah,
our
blah, blah,
doctors,
blah,
our
blah.
nurses, our first
Thank you, Vice
responders.
President Pence.
And I'm going to speak up on behalf of what the
Still
American
going.
people have done.
Vice President Pence, you were in the front row in a Rose Garden event 11 days ago at what seems to have been a super spreader event for senior administration and congressional officials. No social distancing, few masks, and now a cluster of coronavirus cases among those who were there. How can you expect Americans to follow the administration's safety guidelines to protect themselves from COVID when you at the White House have not been doing so?
Well, the American
Fair.
people
It's fair.
have demonstrated over the last 8 months that when given the facts, they're willing to put the health of their families and their neighbors and people they don't even know
This
first.
isn't even an answer.
President Trump and I have great confidence.
They literally, she literally just asked, like, hey, you guys are not wearing masks, and that's a big preventer. Can you explain yourself? And he's like, you know what? The American people are pretty baller. That's his response.
American people and their ability to take that information and put it into practice. In the height of the epidemic, when we were losing a heartbreaking number of 2,500 Americans a day. We surged resources to New Jersey and New York and New Orleans and Detroit. We told the American people what needed to be done, and the American people made the sacrifices. When the outbreak in the Sun Belt happened this summer, again, Americans stepped forward. But the reality is the work of the President of the United States goes on. A vacancy on the Supreme Court of the United States has come upon us, and the President introduced Judge Amy Coney Barrett.
Thank you. Thank you,
What
Vice
are we
President.
What are we talking
Rose
about?
Garden event.
Why?
There's been a great deal of speculation about it. My wife Karen and I were there and honored to be there. Many of the people who were at that event, Susan, actually were tested for coronavirus, and it was an outdoor event, which all of our scientists regularly and routinely advise. The difference here is
I guess
President
he's finally
Trump
getting
trusts the American people to make choices in the best interest of their health. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris consistently talk about mandates and not
I mean,
just
listen, we're
mandates.
still going on a goddamn tangent. I wish she would shut him down. But like, listen, like, I understand the whole idea, but there wasn't exactly like I get like outdoor events, great, fine, but you should still be social distancing.
It's with the coronavirus, but a government takeover of health care,
Thank
the
you, Vice
Green New
President.
Deal, all government control.
Shut
We're
the
about
fuck
freedom
up.
and respecting the freedom of the American people.
Let's talk about respecting the American people. You respect the American people when you tell them the truth. You respect the American people when you have the courage
Which we've
to be a
always
leader
done.
speaking of those things that you may not want people to hear, but they need to hear so they can protect themselves. But this administration stood on information that if you had as a parent, if you had as a worker knowing you didn't have enough money saved up, and now you're standing in a food line because of the ineptitude of an administration that was unwilling to speak the truth to the American people.
That's fair.
So let's talk about caring about the American people. The American people have had to sacrifice far too much because of the incompetence of this administration. It is asking too much of the people.
Susan, we talked
No,
about
Vice
It is
President
asking
Pence.
too much of the people.
Look-
That they would not be equipped with the information they need.
What was Biden's interjection? Susan, we talked about the American people. Tell her to stop talking about it? Is that what you wanted her to?
Help themselves to protect
Susan,
their
the
parents
president-
and
No,
their
I'm
children.
sorry. Kamala Harris, it's in her.
I mean, not for nothing, but Pence just went on a fucking tangent for like 5 minutes, and like she didn't interrupt them once, and now he's the second she gets to a point that he doesn't like, he's like, Susan, can you tell this woman to shut up? Looks like he's having a fucking brain fart. Did I say Trump? Oh, I meant Pence. You know what I meant.
Senator Harris, I'm sorry.
It's
I
fine,
meant
I'm
to say-
Kamala.
No, you're Senator Harris to me. For life to get back to normal, Dr. Anthony Fauci and other experts say that most of the people who can be
I called him Biden. I meant Pence. My bad. You guys know what I meant.
vaccinated need to be vaccinated. But half of Americans now say they wouldn't take a vaccine if it was released now.
I wouldn't. Would you take a vaccine if it was released right now? No. Maybe next summer, sure. When it's like, when the doctor's like, yep. But right now, fuck that. Are you kidding me? No way. They forced this vaccine out so quick. I ain't taking that shit. Might as well actually inject bleach in my veins. Would probably be better. Don't take me out of context. Just a joke, bro.
If the Trump administration approves a vaccine,
If it was proven safe, how do we prove that? Like, honestly, I think a lot of people are rather, dissatisfied with the government in general. If it generally takes years to make a vaccine and this one took less than a year, you think I'm like jumping on board to take it? I'll just continue to work from home and wear a mask.
before or after the election, should Americans take it, and would you take it?
Hell no,
If
dog.
the public health professionals, if Dr. Fauci, if the doctors tell us that we should take it, I'll be the first in line to take it. Absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
Vice President Pence, there have been a lot of repercussions from this pandemic. In recent days, the president's diagnosis of COVID-19 has underscored the importance of the job that you hold and that you are seeking. That's our second topic tonight. It's the role of the vice president. One of you will make history on January 20th. You will be the vice president to the oldest president the United States has ever had. Donald Trump will be 74 years old on Inauguration Day. Joe Biden will be 78 years old. That already has raised concerns among some voters, concerns that have been sharpened by President Trump's hospitalization in recent days. Vice President Pence, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with President Trump about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes without interruption.
Well, Susan, thank you, although I would like to go back.
Old motherfuckers.
I think we need to move on
well,
to the
thank
issue
you,
of
but I would like to
vice
go back.
presidency.
Such an asshole. I mean, it's his right to use whatever the time for whatever he wants to talk about. But like, you know, come on.
Because the reality is that we're going to have a vaccine, Senator, in record time, in unheard of time, in less than a year.
Yeah,
We have 5
There's a reason things take a while. It's, you know, health protocols.
companies in phase 3 clinical
I
trials.
feel bad for
And we're
Susan.
right now producing tens of millions of doses. So the fact that you continue to undermine public confidence in a vaccine, if the vaccine emerges during the Trump administration,
All she said is that she would wait for the public health professionals to say yes or no if it's safe or not. That's fair. I feel the same way. I find it interesting that, like, you know, Trump, or, you know, Pence by extension, you know, is always talking about governmental conspiracy theories and pushing them constantly. But the second that she kind of like expresses or subtextually expresses a conspiracy theory that the vaccine may not be safe because it came out soon, all of a sudden Pence is like, I can't believe you wouldn't take it. You're generating whatever, and the for American people distrust, blah blah blah. It's like, bro, the president told people that it wasn't a big deal to wear a mask, and you're having a fucking meltdown over her like legitimate concern over like whether she would want to take a vaccine that was produced in like a half a year or not when it's supposed to take several years.
administration,
Come on.
I think is unconscionable. And Senator, I just ask you, stop playing politics with people's lives. The reality is,
I mean,
that we
you're
will
both
have a
doing
vaccine,
that.
we believe, before the end of this year.
Yeah, which hasn't been substantiated. We believe we'll have a vaccine before the end of the year. Yeah, who substantiated that? Because everybody's saying that maybe like the middle of summer.
And it will have the capacity to save countless American lives. And your continuous undermining of confidence in a vaccine is just, it's just unacceptable. And let me also say, you know, the reality is when you talk about failure in this administration, we actually do know what failure looks like in a pandemic. It was 2009. The swine flu arrived in the United States. Thankfully, it ended up not being as lethal as the coronavirus. But before the end of the year, when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, not 7.5 million people contracted the swine flu. 60 million Americans contracted the swine flu. If the swine flu had been as lethal as the coronavirus in 2009, when Joe Biden was vice president, we would have lost 2 million American lives.
So the problem with this is that, like, we've already established that Trump could have certainly done better with the coronavirus, specifically with encouraging closing down and encouraging people not to open back up quickly. You know, different states is what I'm referring to, as well as enforcing the idea of wearing a mask. We can, like, we have to understand that the president's surrounded by people who give him advice. He actively goes against that advice. So if he got the advice during swine flu, do you think he would have really given a shit? Based on what we've seen now, maybe not. Honestly, it's speculative, but honestly,
His own chief of staff, Ron Klain, would say last year that it was pure luck that they did, quote, everything possible wrong. And we learned from that. They left the strategic national stockpile.
well, if you learned from that, I guess they did a good thing. No, you learned from it.
They left an empty and hollow plan, but we
Thank you,
still
Vice
learned
President
from it.
Pence.
And I think
Vice
the
President
American
Pence, your
people,
time is
I'm going
up.
to say again, can be
Vice
proud
Oh,
President
come
Pence, I'm
on.
sorry.
Just
what
shut
we
the
have
fuck
done.
up.
And Senator, please
Thank you, Vice
stop
President
undermining
Pence.
confidence in a vaccine.
Senator Harris, let me
It's a
ask you
fair
the same
undermining
question
of
that
a
I asked
vaccine. Just
Vice
saying.
President Pence, which is, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with Vice President Biden about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, and if you win the election next month,
So are they talking about like presidential disability as far as like Biden just being not able to really be a functioning human being?
I think you should. You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So let me tell you, first of all, the day I got the call from Joe
Okay.
Biden, it was actually a Zoom call.
We're just not going to talk about Joe
asking
Biden being
me
out of his
to
fucking
serve
mind.
with him on this
Right?
ticket
Is that what
was
we're doing?
Probably one of the most memorable days of my life. It's
fantastic.
I thought
yeah.
about my mother,
Okay,
who
that's cool.
came to the United States at the age of 19,
Uh-huh.
gave birth to me at the age of 25
Okay.
at Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California.
Uh-huh.
And the thought that I'd be sitting here right now,
Okay.
I know would make her proud.
That's
Must
good.
be looking down on this.
Okay. I'm sorry for your loss,
You
I
know,
suppose.
Joe and I were raised in a
Well, I
very
don't
similar
suppose,
way.
but-
We were raised with values that are about hard work, about
Am I wrong? Isn't this about like presidential disability? And I'm assuming that means like the president being disabled because he's old, he's shit, he's 78.
the value and the
I mean,
dignity
82. Old people shouldn't be able to be president. That's all I'm saying.
of public service, and about the importance of fighting for the dignity of all people. And I think Joe asked me to serve with him because, you know, I have a career that included being elected the first woman district attorney.
Listen, the reason Joe picked her, regardless of whether you think Biden is a better candidate or not, is because she's a black woman. And like she's all there. Like she's you know, she's not dumb. I mean, she has some, you know, whatever. Not that Pence is amazing either. So let's just be honest. But like he picked her because she was a black woman, and like he needs the black vote. And he's been saying some dumb shit about black people. So like, well, let's grab a black woman, which a lot of black people aren't particularly thrilled with, by the way. But I'm just saying.
Of San Francisco.
So you guys keep saying she's not black, but everybody, it's a fucking. I'm just gonna look it up, okay? Because you guys are like, Papa, she's not black.
Right.
She's not black, okay? Is Kamala Harris black? Look, first thing, is she black? Harris was sworn in on January, blah, blah, blah. She's the first woman, the first African-American, and the first South Asian American to hold off. Look, it's just she's black. What is she, a third black? I don't know. You get my point, though, okay? Can we stop with this poo-poo, okay? She's a fucking black woman, okay? Is she black or South Asian? Oh, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. We already established what this is. All right, guys, so shut the freak up, okay?
I created models of innovation for law enforcement in terms of reform of the criminal justice system.
Oh, you've also contributed to this somehow to, I believe, like you're contributing to systemic racism, right? Not very poggers of you.
I was elected the first woman of color and black woman to be elected Attorney General of the state of California, where I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice. And there I took on everything from transnational criminal organizations to the big banks that were taking advantage of homeowners, to for-profit colleges that were taking advantage of veterans. And then, of course, now I serve in the United States Senate as only the second black woman ever elected to the United States
she's
Senate.
black.
I serve on the Senate Intelligence
We
Committee,
did
where I've
it!
been a regular
Harper's
receipt
right!
of classified information about threats to our nation and hotspots around the world. I've traveled the world. I've met with our soldiers in
Very poggers.
war zones. And I think Joe has asked me to serve with him because he knows that we share a purpose, which is about lifting up the American people. And after the 4 years that we have seen of Donald Trump unifying our country around our common values and principles.
Thank you, Senator.
So we're just not going to talk about Joe Biden being out of his fucking mind. Give me 2 seconds. Very quick face pop. For those of you who don't know, I stepped away for a millisecond. Only people with the best eyes could have ever noticed what I just did.
Harris, you know, neither
insane.
President Trump nor Vice
I have a
President Biden has
superpower.
released a sort of detailed health information that had become the modern norm until the 2016 election. And in recent days, President Trump's doctors have given misleading answers or refused to answer basic questions about his health. And
That's actually true. It's insane. We watched it all. They're dodging so heavy. It's fucking nuts. Especially about oxygen. It's so weird.
my question to each of you in turn is this information voters deserve to know? Vice President Pence.
Yes. Very cool. Very easy. Yeah, we deserve transparency on the health of our fucking president.
Would you like to go first?
Well, Susan, thank you. And let me say, on behalf of the President and the First Lady, how moved we've all been by the outpouring of prayers and concern for the President. And I do believe it's emblematic of the prayers and the concern that have ushered forth for every American impacted by the coronavirus. But the care the President received at Walter Reed Hospital, the White House doctors was exceptional. And the transparency that they practiced all along the way will continue.
Bro, I can't get any fucking juice out of this straw. I'm fucking pissed. What the fuck? Is it broken? Fuck it.
The American people have a right to know
Pissed off.
about the health and well-being of their president.
And then you should
we'll
be expressing
continue to
that.
do that.
Well, you're
But
not
I'm
doing
just
it.
extremely
You're a
grateful.
fucking bullshit
and
artist.
was more than a little moved by the broad and bipartisan support. And Senator, I want to thank you and Joe Biden for your expressions, genuine concern. And I also want to congratulate you, as I did on that phone call.
That
on
Zoom
the
call
historic nature
brought
of
to you by
your
Zoom.
nomination. I never expected to be on this stage 4 years ago, so I know the feeling. But the reality is,
But you're a yucky white man,
we've got
straight
an
white man.
election
So it was
for the
more.
American
It was more
people in the
likely.
midst of this challenging year, and the stakes have never been higher.
Thank
but I
you.
think the
Thank
choice
you,
has
Vice
never
President
been
Pence.
clearer.
I want to give Senator Harris a chance to respond to the same question I asked, which is, do voters have a right to know more detailed health information about
Yeah.
presidential candidates, and especially about
They do.
presidents, especially when
they
they're
do.
facing some kind of challenge?
Absolutely, and that's why Joe Biden has been so incredibly transparent, and certainly by contrast, the president has not, both in terms of
Got
health
him.
records, but also let's look at taxes.
Oh, what are you talking
We
about?
now
We're
know
talking about
because
health.
of great investigative journalism that Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes. When I first heard about it,
Let's just be clear. That's federal income tax. It's still bullshit, but be contextually accurate.
I literally said, you mean $750,000? And it was like, no, $750. We now know Donald Trump owes and is in debt for $400 million. And just so everyone is clear, when we say in debt, it means you owe money to somebody.
Thank you for telling me
And
that. I
it'd be
never knew
really
that.
good to know who the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, owes money to, because the American people have a right to know.
Really quick, right? I'm just bringing this up for context. Usually, when we talk about like who does the president owe money to, in this instance for Trump, we're usually specifically talking about Russia, right? I just want to bring it up. But that article, like the New York Times piece that they did, said that there was no connection to Russia. That's what they had said based on that report. Just throwing it out there for context.
What is influencing the president's decisions? And is he making those decisions on the best interest of the American people, of you?
It's still a fair general question. I'm just bringing that up.
Self-interest. So, Susan, I'm glad you asked about transparency, because it has to be across the board. Joe has been incredibly transparent.
Honestly, when we go on the topic of transparency, I think it's totally fine for trans people to be parents.
Over many, many years. The one thing we all know about Joe, he puts it all out there. He is honest, he is forthright. But Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been about covering up everything.
Thank you, Senator Harris. I want to give you a chance to respond, Vice President.
Well, look, I respect the fact that Joe Biden spent 47 years in public life. I respect your public service as well.
Thank you.
You said that in such a weird, diminishing way.
Who's a businessman, he's a job creator, who's paid tens of millions of dollars in taxes.
Okay, but just because somebody pays taxes doesn't mean they paid all of their taxes, okay? I get he's paid a lot of money in taxes. It doesn't mean he's paid as much as he should pay. Let's just be honest here, okay? Just be honest.
Payroll taxes, property taxes. He's
just not the federal income taxes. Like, let's just keep in mind that like, what the fuck was I even gonna say? Oh yeah, like the past 11 out of his last 18 years, he didn't pay federal income tax. Oh.
Created tens of thousands of American jobs. And the president said those public.
And I know somebody said tax avoidance is legal. Fair point. Joe Biden was one of the ones who allowed him to basically avoid taxes, though he seems to, in his new tax plan, try to remove that. But not all of it, as suggested in that article, was tax avoidance, like legal tax avoidance. Like there was some really fishy shit in there too. So just keep that in mind.
Public reports are not accurate. And the president's also released literally stacks of financial disclosures the American people can review just as the law allows. But the distinction here is that Joe Biden, 47 years in public service compared to President Donald Trump.
It's funny because what Trump released, you guys have to understand, it comes from like the framing of Trump's team and himself. So that's the best framing we're ever going to get for like his taxes, and it's still not great.
Who brought all of that experience 4 years ago.
Thank you, Vice
and
President.
turned this economy around by cutting taxes, rolling back regulation, unleashing
Vice
American
President
energy,
Pence.
fighting for free and fair trade, and all of that's
thank you,
on the
Vice
line
President
if
Pence.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Thank you, Vice President.
That's a good segue into
That
our
means
third
shut the
topic,
fuck up,
which
bro.
is about the economy. This has been another aspect of life for Americans that's been so affected by this coronavirus. We have a jobs crisis brewing. On Friday, we learned that the unemployment rate had declined to 7.9% in September, but the job growth had stalled, and that was before the latest round of layoffs and furloughs in the airline industry at Disney and elsewhere. Hundreds of thousands of discouraged workers have stopped looking for work. Nearly 11 million jobs that existed at the beginning of the year haven't been replaced. Those hardest hit include Latinos, blacks, and women.
Let's just be very, very clear again that all economists are saying that it is surprising how quickly we're bouncing back from this. So keep that context in mind, because the framing of this is kind of disparaging to Trump, whereas you may not like him, but his bounce back is doing rather well.
Senator Harris, the Biden-Harris campaign has proposed new programs to boost the economy, and you would pay for that new spending by raising $4 trillion in taxes on wealthy individuals and corporations. Some economists warn that could curb entrepreneurial ventures that fuel growth and create jobs. Would raising taxes put the recovery at risk? And you have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
So first and foremost, I'm drinking a matcha latte because you guys keep asking me from Dunkin'. So like it's kind of a tricky thing to talk about raising taxes right now. My understanding is they're not going to raise taxes on anybody under a household income of $400,000. That might be a little much for me. I feel like you could probably lower that, but whatever. Especially since that's like after write-offs. Like that's a lot. Like you could do like $200,000. People are writing shit off. Like you itemize your shit, and like let's say you make $250,000, you might be able to fucking write off $50,000 worth of shit anyway. But whatever. That's fine. But like it's a difficult thing to say like, yeah, let's raise taxes during a recession. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being wrong. I mean, like during the Obama administration, they did rather well. It was a very slow recovery, of course, but it was still a solid, strong, and consistent recovery. And like one of the things that they did was expand welfare usage, like food stamps usage, and it helped a lot. People were criticizing Obama for it, and I suppose Biden by extension. But like the response was, why is it so acceptable to give trillions of dollars to fucking big banks, but it's not okay so that they could just be basically, just rip off the Americans and the economy and whatnot, but it's not okay for people to want to be able to eat in it, right? So.
Thank you. On the issue of the economy, I think there couldn't be a more fundamental difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden believes you measure the health and the strength of America's economy based on the health and the strength of
all the black people we put in jail. Yeah, Joe Biden. I'm just kidding. I just thought it was funny.
The American worker and the American family.
That's fair. There's a lot of write-offs and tax credits in Biden's plan. I had actually looked into it yesterday for a lot of like low-income earners.
On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who measures the strength of the economy based on how rich people are doing, which is why he passed.
Trump, I don't know that that's necessarily accurate. I think Trump measures the strength of the economy purely by GDP. And I think that as an advanced society, we're beyond GDP being the number one focus on whether we're doing well as a country. Because just for you guys who don't know, the last 3 years, the first time in the last 100 years, that life expectancy is going down. Mental health is a huge problem. People are self-diagnosing. People are self-medicating. We have a drug epidemic. We're fucked right now. So we need more human-first capitalism.
Passed a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America, leading to
True.
a $2 trillion deficit that the American people are going to have to pay for.
Yeah, so that's $2 trillion over 10 years. When they refer to deficits or growth or whatever, it's always over a 10-year period, which is true. I talked about that. It spurred a lot of economic growth. Fantastic. It's great. But like, this is why I say it wasn't worth it, because $2 trillion over the next 10 years, $200 billion a year added to our annual federal deficit. Right? When Obama got into office, I know some of you guys don't like Obama, but let's just talk about this really quick. Okay. When Obama got into office, $1.4 trillion annual federal deficit. He left with a $650 billion annual federal deficit. For those of you who don't know, an annual federal deficit is how much money you're spending over the amount of money you're taking in. It's not the total amount of debt. It was before the coronavirus. It was up to $1 trillion. So, you know, and that's before the coronavirus, okay?
On day one, Joe Biden will repeal that tax bill. He'll get rid of it. And what he'll do with the money is invest it in the American people. And through a plan that is about investing in infrastructure, something that Donald Trump said he would do. I remember hearing about some infrastructure week. I don't think it ever happened. But Joe Biden will do that. He'll invest in infrastructure. It's about upgrading our roads and bridges, but also investing in clean energy and renewable energy. Joe is going to invest that money in what we need to do around innovation. There was a time when our country believed in science and invested in research and development.
That's funny. Come on, that was funny. That was a funny dig. She gave him a little nay bomb on that one. That's why they got that bulletproof glass there, because she's got fucking dagger eyes. She's got fucking boom high beams on those. Bullets are gonna fly out of those things.
So that we were an innovation leader on the globe. Joe Biden will use that money to invest in education. So, for example, for folks who want to go to a 2-year community college, it will be free. If you come from
see, like, here's where I'm getting the problem with. And, like, maybe she's exclusive talking about poor people, whatever. I don't know. I have such a fucking big problem with, like, schools becoming free. And I'm going to explain to you why, right? Now, in general, I don't think it's necessary. But the biggest problem I have with it is the fact that it's always just, like, unchecked money. It's like, hey guys, let's subsidize fucking colleges even more. Now, why I say that, because like the more subsidies the college has gone up drastically in cost, like even versus the value of a dollar over like the past, I think 10 or so years, right? 10, 20 years. We give more money to the government, to these schools, and they charge more fucking money, right? So generally speaking, we pay if you go to a community college, you pay a third. The state pays a third, federal government pays a third, okay? And then every time the government gives them more money, they charge so much more money. So much more money. And it's like, you know, you want to make college free? Okay. But tell them to lower where the most of the cost comes from their fucking administrative costs. And they're not lowering those. So like, stop just being like, oh, more free money. It's bullshit. It's not really getting to the real problem. Okay? The reason it's so expensive now is because of all this constant subsidization. They can get away with it. They're constantly getting away with it. There's no regulation. Like, all the government really needs to do is say, listen, you charge whatever the hell you want. But if let's say your administrative costs don't fall in line with the general administrative costs, right? We're just not going to give you money. And what do you think they're going to do? Oh, okay, we'll just go by ourselves. No, they'll lower the costs. That's all it really takes. Okay, there you go. Especially now, you're all going to online school. It's so much cheaper. You're not even in a goddamn classroom. That's the way of the future, too, unfortunately.
Family that makes less than $125,000, you'll go to a public university for free. And across the board, we'll make sure that if you have student loan debt, it's cut by $10,000. That's how Joe Biden thinks about the economy, which is it's about investing in the people of our country, as opposed to passing a tax bill, which had the benefit of letting American corporations.
I'm with Yang on this whole, the way that we should actually handle student loan debt, which is like buy up all the debt. The American government buys the debt, like interest-free. Everybody's implemented in a 10 for 10 program, which basically means that you pay 10% of your salary for 10 years. And if you pay it off before then, great. If you don't, then you're just getting exonerated of it. At the same time, lowering the cost of schools by saying, hey, you need to lower the cost of your administrative fees, or we're not going to give you subsidies. They'll lower the costs. So this has like a nice way of pulling off some tension off of, like, you know, people who went to college. while also lowering the cost of school in the long run. And we don't need to have the government pay for it. Then you know what I mean? Like it'll just be cheaper.
Go offshore to do.
Because like $10,000 is nothing for most people who have tens of thousands of dollars of debt, and you might go, well, they chose that field. It's like, yeah, they chose that field because fucking high school goes, oh, you should follow your dreams, go to school, do this. Oh, you should be a fucking art major. No, unless maybe you should be an art major. Unless you have a pure passion for something, don't pursue it. Okay? If you're not willing to do something for no money, then it's probably not your passion, right? It's probably not your passion. Go get a job that's gonna make you fucking money, man. I'm just saying. Maybe college is the way, or maybe a fucking 6-month training program and how to program is a better way. You understand what I'm saying?
Do their business.
Thank you,
You're
Senator
welcome.
Harris. Vice President Pence, your administration has been predicting a rapid and robust recovery, but the latest economic report suggests that's not happening.
I don't know, man. From what I understand, they're having an incredibly strong recovery. Maybe I guess this might be very new, and I'm not educated on it.
Should Americans be braced for an economic comeback that is going to take not months, but a year or more? You have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
Yes, because it's a huge fucking problem. No, like this was a big one, guys. You guys realize? Here's something I want to tell you. Sorry for all the noise. You guys realize that every fucking 10 years or so, more or less, there's another recession, right? Whether it's corporations fucking us, or corporations fucking us, or maybe it's corporations fucking us, or maybe it's a random pandemic. We have a goddamn recession, right? And the biggest problem is like we come in and we're like, hey, we need to have taxes, right? We're like, oh, we got to have some taxes. Let's pool money. Let's go into a fucking surplus, not a deficit. And then like, all of a sudden people are like, why are taxes so high? Let's cut those. We cut the taxes, and then a fucking recession hits, and we're like, well, hey, we don't have money for this. How are we going to afford this? I don't know. Maybe we stop irresponsibly spending. And whether you like it or not, it's fucking Republicans who do this shit. They're not even fiscally conservative. They're not like, hey, we need to cut these programs. They're like, hey, we need to like just cut programs, cut taxes, spend more in the military. Guys, fuck everything. You know, it's like silly. And like, what are you doing, dog? You guys want to bail banks out every 10 years, but you don't want to fucking have the banks pay taxes? Fucking insane to me.
When President Trump and I took office, America had gone through the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression.
Who cares? First of all, that's not true. It's a lie. Second of all, who cares if it was? Do you want to know why it doesn't matter if the recovery for if Obama and Biden's recovery was as slow as the Great Depression? You want to know why, guys? Would you like to hear the answer to that? It's because the Great Recession is what we call that issue from 2007, 2008 that Biden and Trump and Obama dealt with. It was the worst recession since the Great Depression. So if it took just as long as that one, who the fuck would have thought? Like, yeah, no shit. It's justifiable. It was bad. It was a bad recession.
So when Joe Biden was vice president, they tried to tax and spend and regulate and bail our way back to a growing economy.
Yeah, you want to know why we did that? Because deregulation is what fucked the economy. You had banks doing a bunch of dumb, shady bullshit. They were being dishonest about the proposal of like house loans, right? They were also leveraging more money for like investments than they had for incredibly risky investments. So of course you're going to regulate, and it worked. Yeah, it wasn't a massive boom economy, but it was a sustained 1.5% GDP growth, and it was working. Okay, and the reality is that the Great Recession exacerbated another problem that was already in existence, which was technology taking over and displacing jobs, displacing them, and driving down wages. So it sped up an already big problem. So we had less time to deal with it. We're still not even socially there where we like acknowledge that technology is a double-edged sword. So I mean, enough with this bullshit.
President Trump cut taxes across the board, despite what Senator Harris said.
Which is honestly kind of unnecessary.
Says the average American family of four had $2,000 in savings in taxes.
Okay, that's
And
nice.
with the rise in wages that occurred, most predominantly for blue-collar, hardworking Americans, The average household income for a family of four increased by $4,000 following President Trump's tax cuts.
Listen, that's nice, but like the tax cuts weren't sustainable. It was trickle down economics. We spent an additional $250 billion on it. So I think after we collected additional tax, it was like $200 billion increase to the deficit. It's like, come on, man. Come on. And it's not sustainable. We can't just keep spending money. That would be like if you guys went out and you're like, I'm going to go take a $1,000 loan against my credit card, right? And you're like, look, I made $1,000 more. And you got to pay back more than that.
But America, you just heard Senator Harris tell you, on day one, Joe Biden's going to raise your taxes. It's really remarkable to think, Susan. I mean, right after...
In his defense, she didn't really clarify well enough, in my opinion, that it's only people under over $400,000 are going to have a reversal. But like, yeah, he's full of shit.
A time where we're going through a pandemic that lost 22 million jobs at the height. We've already added back 11.6 million jobs because we had a president who cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed American energy.
Bro, but those things, the taxes and the regulations in general, those were the things that were preventing another pandemic. Could you imagine if we had another fucking shady, scummy, shadow bank fucking bullshit fucking situation again, and like banks were just screwing, like we have another recession again? It's just, come on.
We fought for free and fair trade and secured $4 trillion from the Congress of the United States to give direct payments to families, save 50 million jobs through the Paycheck Protection Program. We literally have spared no expense to help the American people and the American worker through this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to raise taxes.
Is he specifically talking about like the money that we got during the coronavirus to $1,200 once? If that's what he's referring to, like, he should have done more. I mean, like, they did have unemployment. That was nice. But, like, I don't know, man. It's just, it's all, I don't know.
They want to bury
he's not
our
talking about that?
economy
Okay.
under a $2 trillion Green New Deal, which you were one of the original co-sponsors of in the United States Senate. They want to abolish fossil fuels and ban fracking, which would cost hundreds of thousands of American jobs all across the heartland. And Joe Biden wants to go back to the economic surrender to China, that when we took office, half of our international trade deficit was with China alone. And Joe Biden wants to repeal all of the tariffs that President Trump put into effect to fight for American jobs and American workers. Joe Biden says democracy's on the ballot. Make no mistake about it, Susan. The American economy, the American comeback is on the ballot with 4 more years of growth and opportunity, 4 more years of President Donald Trump. 2021 is going to be the biggest economic year in the history of the
If we were, like, listen, I don't like Trump's economic policies, but if we were only voting for Trump from, like, an economic perspective, I don't care. It's, like, his social problem. He's, like, kind of a social problem, man. Like, you see how he's downplaying the coronavirus? It's, like, rough, man. Like, it's rough, you know? Just saying.
country.
Thank you, Vice President Pence. Senator Harris.
I'm just waiting for the fly to enter the
I
debate.
thought we saw enough of it in last week's debate, but I think this is supposed to be a debate based on fact and truth. And the truth and the fact is, Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000 a year.
Well, it's anybody in the household under $400,000, not an individual. It's still a lot to me. I don't know. Like, do you need a $400,000 fucking dollars? Well, I'm just saying, like, why are we skirting around that? Like, it's just whatever. Either way, middle class isn't going to be affected.
The Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
Like, there's no reason for her to be so, like, rude. She literally could say, like, she could have contested his contestment, but instead she decided to play this, like, look at me, I'm wearing shoulder pads. Look at how broad my shoulder, you know what I'm saying? Like, she could just say, like, yeah, but not for people, like, people under $400,000 are, like, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. Maybe I'm being too hard on Camila because I'm a sexist white man. I don't know.
Be important if you said the truth. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. That was tax cuts that gave the average working family $2,000 in a tax break.
Why doesn't she just interrupt him?
Senator,
That is
that's the math.
absolutely not true. That
Is he
tax
only
bill-
cutting? Is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
Yes.
If you don't mind letting me.
Just say yes. Please, just say, yeah. You know that, Pence. So shut the fuck up. That's all she needed to say.
Let me finish. We can then have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay. Joe Biden will not raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He has been very clear about that.
Okay.
Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden
Oh, she got mad at that.
is the one who, during the Great Recession, was responsible for the Recovery Act that brought America back. And now the Trump-Pence administration wants to take credit when they rode the coattails of Joe Biden's success.
Listen, there's this constant assertion that that everything Obama did was that's the only reason that the economy was strong. Listen, I say it every single time. I don't like what Trump did. I would reverse it in a heartbeat. But it is the reason why he had a very strong economy. So stop being like, oh, the economy was poo-poo, or rather oh, Trump didn't do anything. It's no, he did quite a bit for the economy. It just wasn't sustainable because of how much increased the deficit.
For the economy that they had at the beginning of their term. Of course, now the economy is a complete disaster. But Joe Biden, on the one hand, did that. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who has reigned over a recession that is being compared to the Great Depression. On the one hand, you have Joe
Well, yeah, but that's through the coronavirus. I mean, we already talked about his attachment to the coronavirus, but come on.
Biden, who was responsible with President Barack Obama for the Affordable Care Act, which brought health care to over 20 million Americans and protected people with pre-existing conditions. And what it also did is it saved those families who otherwise were going bankrupt because of hospital bills they could not afford. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who's in court right now, trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which means that you will lose protections if you have pre-existing conditions. And this is very important, Susan.
Yes,
and it's
but
important.
we need to give Vice President.
I'd just like to, he interrupted me, and I'd like to just finish, please. If you have a pre-existing condition, heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, they're coming for you. If you love someone who has a pre-existing condition, they're coming for you.
So it kind of is true, because let's be honest here, right? Trump has proposed nothing when it comes to some kind of a health care plan since he started. The first thing he decided to try to tackle for some reason was healthcare. He was advised hey, it's not that easy. He removed the individual mandate. That's fine. I disagree with it, mostly because the reason we had the individual mandate is because the more people that were on it, theoretically, the cheaper it would become. Whatever. Part of Obamacare also comes with the pre-existing conditions protections, and I think that people need to understand that. And nobody wants to get rid of that. Now, going into pre-existing conditions protections, you guys need to understand that part of the increased premium cost for insurance specifically comes from that. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's privatized or public healthcare. There has to be an offset of losses. If I have insurance and I don't really need it, I have to pay for somebody who has insurance and they need it because they have a pre-existing condition. That's why insurance went up, one of the reasons. Part of it's the subsidization of it and the fact that more people were going on it. But also part of it was because more people had access to it because it protected you for pre-existing conditions. So if you had something like diabetes, a normal insurance company would be like, oh, fuck you, you could just go die. You understand my point? You get what I'm saying? So it was always going to increase. And frankly, regardless of which direction we go, if we do decide to maintain pre-existing conditions protections, which we should, insurance is going to be expensive regardless. Keep that in mind, okay?
If you are under the age of 26 on your parents' coverage, they're coming for you.
Probably.
Senator Harris, thank you.
You're
Let
welcome.
me give you a chance to respond.
I don't know, man. Harris is a little sharp, man. She's kind of hot. I don't know. Is that sexist? It's just, I'm into it. Maybe she has a WAP. Maybe Pence has a WAP, too.
I hope we have a chance to talk about health care because Obamacare was a disaster. The American people remember it well.
It was a disaster,
President
sure.
Trump and I have a plan to improve health care and to protect pre-existing conditions for every
Oh, can you just show us that?
But look,
Wait, hold on. What did you say? Hold on. What did you say?
protect pre-existing. Trump and I have a plan.
Oh, do you? What's the plan? It's been fucking 3.5 years. More than that. Where's your plan? That's bullshit, dude. You guys have been talking about how you have a fucking plan. Nobody's giving you shit for it. You guys haven't produced anything except Obamacare bad. But you guys can't even get an motion to replace it. So what the fuck is your plan? What is your goddamn plan? I don't understand. What's the plan? To just keep going. We got a plan. Got it. You gonna write that up in a bill? We got a plan. Hey, we got a plan. Hey,
to improve healthcare and
we got a plan.
protect.
Yeah,
pre-existing
what is it?
conditions.
What is that? How are you going to improve healthcare, protect pre-existing conditions, and make it cheaper unless you do something called a public option so that poor people have, honestly, worse insurance, but at least it's decent and it's cheaper. This is the whole thing that gets me about the Medicare for All thing. Is like, I'm for public health care. People are like, oh, it's so bad. You know, public health care is so bad, right? It's so bad. Oh, you have to go on wait in a line. Well, you know what? Okay, first and foremost, it's better than nothing. Okay, I bet poor people who don't have insurance, they say like, hey, listen, you just gotta, if you want to go to the doctor, it's gonna take a month. They're not like, oh my God, that's awful. They're like, oh, okay, if you need emergency services, you can go to the hospital. All right, this is the coverage we're talking about. But everybody's like, oh, it's so bad. It's such an infringement. Motherfucker, then like, let's just make sure we maintain a public option so that you can have better insurance than them. I'm fine with that. Baseline. We need a baseline in America. They don't go buy into more insurance. We solved the problem. Yeah. God, it's crazy. It's like, you know, some conservatives basically hate poor people, which is whatever. It's dumb. But then they're like, we have to make sure that we have access to better health. Like, you don't really particularly care for poor people. But then when we say, hey, let's offer worse insurance for poor people, they're like, no, that's an outrage. I mean, come on. All right, I'm not trying to be anti-conservative here because I actually identify as myself as a conservative, more new age. But you get my point. Like 50 years ago, fucking healthcare, private health, or individualized healthcare was like on the fucking ballot. You know what I'm saying? It's just insane. You get what I'm saying?
Every American. But look, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts.
Well, you just pushed a misinformation, Pence.
You yourself said on multiple occasions when you were running
And Canada has a tier system
for president
of
that
insurance.
you would ban fracking.
She did
Joe
say that,
Biden
apparently.
looked at a supporter in the eye and pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels. They have a $2 trillion version of the Green New Deal, Susan, that your newspaper, USA Today, said really wasn't that very different from the original Green New Deal.
That's not poggers.
More taxes, more regulation, banning fracking.
More taxes and regulation isn't bad. Biden said he's not banning fracking. You know, we should be looking for greener alternatives, but, you know.
Abolishing fossil fuel, crushing American energy, and economic surrender to China is a prescription for economic decline. President Trump and I will keep America growing. The V-shaped recovery that's underway right now will continue with 4 more years of President Donald Trump.
Thank you very, very much, Vice President Pence. Once again, you've provided the perfect segue to a new topic, which is, and Vice President Pence, I'd like to pose
climate
the first
change.
question to you.
Vice President Pence, is climate change real?
This year, we've seen record-setting hurricanes in the South. Another one, Hurricane Delta, is now threatening the Gulf. And we have seen record-setting wildfires in the West. Do you believe, as the scientific community has concluded, that man-made climate change has made wildfires bigger, hotter, and more deadly, and have made hurricanes wetter, slower, and more damaging? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan.
Can't wait.
Well, first, I'm very proud of our record on the environment and on conservation.
I wouldn't be.
According to all of the best estimates, our air and land are cleaner than any time ever recorded.
That's good.
Our water is among the cleanest in the world.
I remember hearing that last night when I watched it the first time. I can't believe our fucking water is just among the cleanest. Like, we're the most powerful economy in the world, and we're like, yeah, we have some decent water. I feel like we should have better water than, like, among the best. We should have the best fucking... How do we not have the best water? I don't know.
And just a little while ago, the president signed the Outdoors Act. It's the largest investment in our public lands and public parks in 100 years.
Somebody's like, yeah, we're doing... You know, I didn't even think of that. I've made the point before, but it's like, yeah, you know why the environment's doing so fucking well? It's because, like, nobody is out to destroy it right now. Bro, I remember how, like, insane it was. Oh, it was fucking noticeable in my area how much more temperamental the fucking weather was when I was... Because I had to work, and I maintained working outside during the coronavirus. Like, it was insane. Everything was just, like, fresher. It was nuts. And like nobody talks about it, but it's like, yeah, we're doing pretty well environmentally. A lot of there's been a fraction of the number of cars on the road because of our great policy. No, motherfucker, people weren't going out. That's why we had a better environmental protections and whatnot, or a better environment for a while, because like the environment got a break as people weren't moving.
So President Trump has made a commitment to conservation and to the environment. Now, with regard to climate change, the climate is changing. But the issue is, what's the cause and what do we do about it?
Okay, let's hear this.
President Trump has made it clear that we're going to continue to listen to the science.
No, he hasn't.
Now, Joe Biden
No, he's not.
and Kamala Harris would put us back in the Paris Climate Accord.
Which would be a good thing. I want you guys to understand, the Paris Climate Accord wasn't for us. We didn't get into the Paris Climate Accord for us, okay? You want to know one of the reasons why I think this country is the greatest country in the fucking world? It's because we run shit. We fucking run shit, okay? We went into the Paris Climate Accord to run shit, so we had control of the rest of the world on how they were gonna fucking pollute. That's why we were in the fucking Paris Climate Accord, okay? I honestly believe in that America is the greatest country in the world, and we should be expanding ourselves, and our ideas of Western civilization. Paris Climate Accord was another instance of that. We were in it, we had control over it, and we gave our fucking word that we'd stay in it, and we came out of it. Even if you hate that fucking thing, the reality is that as America, and a core American value, a core human value should be to maintain your word, and it was Trump's responsibility as the American president, not as Donald Trump, to maintain the word of the American president. And by pulling out of that, and by pulling out of the Iran deal, we look weaker as American people, as Americans because of it. That's the reality of the situation, okay? Our word fucking matters, and we can't let that be diminished. That should be a core value that everybody should be able to get behind, whether you're Republican or Democrat or Independent, okay? That's the reality of the situation.
Oppose the Green New Deal.
That's fine. I don't give a
would
shit about the Green New
crush
Deal.
American energy, would increase
Maybe.
the energy costs of American families in their homes, and literally would crush American jobs. And President Trump and I believe that the progress that we have made in a cleaner environment has been happening precisely because we have a strong free market economy.
No, that's because of the fact that the coronavirus shut us down for such a long time.
What's remarkable is the United States has reduced CO2 more than the countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord, but we've done it through innovation.
Well, we also have gotten hit harder by the coronavirus and have had to shut down more than all those other countries. So maybe that's why. Maybe that's the reason why. Come on, like Camila, say that.
And we've done it through natural gas and fracking, which, Senator, the American people can go look at the record. I know Joe Biden says otherwise now, as you do, but the both of you repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and banning fracking.
Listen, we should slowly gravitate away from fossil fuels. Honestly, I would like to get to a point slowly where the only use that we have for fossil fuels are like military usage, right? It makes sense to this way we don't have to restructure the entire military. I'm going to assume that gas and fossil fuels runs things, more powerful machinery more effectively. Totally fine with that. Okay, totally fine with that. But you don't need to go from fucking 0 to 60 in a half a second, okay? An electric car that speeds up a little slow, we'll be okay. We'll manage, okay? We should slowly get there. Slowly. Does that make sense? Okay. Not now, probably take us several years, but you get my point.
And so by creating the kind of American innovation, we're actually steering toward a stronger and better environment. With regard to wildfires, President Trump and I believe that forest management has to be front and center, and even...
Listen, that's true, okay? I understand that. Totally true. There's horrible forest management in California. 100% true, Pence, very poggers. Here's the problem that I have with this assertion, right? What is poor forest management mean? It means at its core, human beings are failing to do the right thing. They're failing to manage the forests due to, I would assume, some kind of an economic variable. And yet, what is pollution at its core? Humans failing to do the right thing, assumably due to an economic variable. at its core, climate change, whether it's poor regulations of our fucking forests or dumping massive diarrhea into the fucking atmosphere, humans are failing emphatically. That's the reality of it. And for anybody who's like, I don't think climate change is a big deal, here's what I'll ask you to do. Don't really do it. Disclaimer, trigger warning. Sit in your fucking garage with your car running. Don't do that. But you get my point. You're gonna die if you wouldn't sit in your car with the fucking tailpipe exhaust dumping into the inside of your car while it's closed. Then why not? It's not harmful. It's harmful to you. You don't think it's harmful to the planet? Common sense. Sometimes we got to just get back to the common ones. Put your mouth on a tailpipe, you're going to die. That's not good for you. It's not good for the atmosphere. It's just the honest truth. Let's just come to this understanding, guys. It's very simple. This isn't a conservative / Democrat, progressive, whatever. If you say, hey, climate change is an issue, we need to deal with the forest the right way by cleaning it up better, and we should focus more on carbon capture technology maybe and pressuring India and China instead of putting all the blame on us, that's fucking fantastic. That's a great perspective. But we can differ in the solutions to climate change without rejecting what climate change is and the existence of it, okay? That's something we need to understand, very much so, okay? And I'll say someone like Dan Crenshaw, good on you, acknowledges climate change but talks about different solutions, okay? That's what we need to have the conversation about, okay, guys?
Governor Gavin Newsom from your state has agreed we've got to work on forest management. And with regard to hurricanes, the National Oceanic Administration tells us that actually as difficult as they are,
Thank you, Vice President.
there are no more hurricanes today than
Thank
there
you.
were 100 years ago.
Okay, but we're not really talking about the amount of hurricanes. We're talking about the intensity of hurricanes. Two big differences. They're more intense, dog.
Thank you.
But many of the climate alarmists
President Pence,
use
I'm sorry, your time
hurricanes
is up.
and wildfires to try and
Thank
sell
you,
their
Vice
bill of
President
goods of a
Pence.
Green New Deal.
Guys, we got to be careful of these wildfires.
And President Trump and I are going to always
Okay.
put
Thank you,
American
Vice
jobs.
President.
and
Be
American
careful of
workers
wildfires,
first.
guys.
Senator Harris, as the Vice President mentioned, you co-sponsored the Green New Deal in Congress.
Sure.
But Vice President Biden said in last week's debate that he does not support the Green New Deal. But if you look at the Biden-Harris campaign website, it describes the Green New Deal as a crucial framework. What exactly would be the stance of a Biden-Harris administration?
It seems like Biden wants like the Green New Deal panderer vote while also being like, guys, I'm just kidding. Like he wants the hyper progressives, but also doesn't want to push away the moderates, clearly.
Administration toward the Green New Deal? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. So first of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact. That is a fact.
I believe that is a fact.
I
But
will-
you seem to be in support of banning fracking, Camila. Probably as a little bit of a pander method. You're a bad girl.
Repeat
You're a bad woman, okay? I don't want to be diminishing to her status as a woman, okay? I'm sorry.
that Joe Biden has been very clear that he thinks about growing jobs, which is why he will not increase taxes for anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year.
Can we just clarify households that make $400,000 a year? Can we just clarify that, please, Mrs. Harris? I don't know.
Joe Biden's economic plan, Moody's, which is a reputable Wall Street firm, has said will create 7 million more jobs than Donald Trump's. And part of those jobs that will be created by Joe Biden are going to be about clean energy and renewable energy.
Okay.
Because you see,
Maybe.
Joe understands that the west coast of our country is burning, including my home state of California.
True, but again, you need to bring up the fucking poor forest management of California. You can't let them get away. Well, I guess you get away with it. You can't let people get away with it. Like if we're going to talk about humans' negative impact on the humans' negative impact on the environment, talk about all of it, just not the ones that make you look good.
Joe sees what is happening on the Gulf states, which are being battered by storms. Joe has seen and talked with the farmers in Iowa, whose entire crops have been destroyed because of floods. And so Joe believes, again, in science. I'll tell you something, Susan. I served, when I first got to the Senate, on the committee that's responsible for the environment. Do you know this administration took the word science off the website
Is that true? That's
and then
weird.
took the phrase climate change off the website? We have seen a pattern.
He's nodding his head no, but like that would be a weird lie, and I feel like it's true, and I never knew that, and that's like dumb as shit. Like that's dumb, Pence. You look very silly for doing that.
With this administration, which is they don't believe in science. And Joe's plan is about saying we're going to deal with it, but we're also going to create jobs. Donald Trump, when asked about the wildfires in California, and
you notice how in none of these debates we talk about fiscal responsibility in any capacity.
The question was, the science is telling us this. You know what Donald Trump said? Science doesn't know. So let's talk about who is prepared to lead our country over the.
You can see in Pence's head, he's like, I just can't wait to. He wants to give her conversion therapy from a Democrat to a Republican. He's very angry with her.
The course of the next 4 years on what is an existential threat.
He's so
to us as
angry.
human beings.
He's aging
Joe
in front of
about
us.
Saying we're going to invest that in renewable energy. It's going to be about the creation of millions of jobs. We will achieve net zero emissions by 2050, carbon neutral by 2035. Joe has a plan.
Okay.
This has been a lot of talk from the Trump administration, and really it has been to go backward instead of forward. We will also re-enter the climate agreement with pride.
He should.
Senator Harris just said that climate change is an existential.
You know, like honestly, like we talk about American values all the time. Like I don't know, man. One of those American values really is our word, and I think that that's like a really big reason to like honestly potentially vote for Biden. I'm leaning towards Biden after these debates, honestly. And like part of it really is I really believe in the idea of American expansion of ideals and ideas and like the power of our word just as a country and our American president. And like I'm not seeing that value being maintained with Trump, honestly, when we really go through these, and it like bothers the fuck out of me because I always learned that like your word is your word and you commit to something whether it's for right or wrong, you know?
Threat. Vice President Pence, do you believe that climate change poses an existential threat?
As I said, Susan, the climate is changing.
The climate is changing. What a walk off. That's such a pathetic answer, dude. Come on. Yeah, it's changing, but like the overwhelming majority of scientists are like, yes, there's an impact, the human impact on the climate. We need to start transitioning.
We'll follow the science. But
that's what it's saying.
Once again, Senator Harris is denying the fact that they're going to raise taxes.
Okay, what the fuck are you talking about?
On every American. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that on day one he was going to repeal the Trump.
At this point, he's like you guys have to understand at this point that okay, so he's already established that Biden's going to repeal the tax cuts, whatever, and he was proven wrong, right? And now he gets to a point of, hey, are you going to believe in the science of climate? And now he's like, not really, but kind of, but not really, but hey, they're going to raise taxes. Like, dude, when it comes to the reversal of the thing, no, they're not. We've already made that very clear. So he's backed into a corner, and he's expressing that by just doubling down on bullshit the entire time. Now, if he made the point like, yeah, they're going to increase taxes through like the Green New Deal, that's fine. But you're constantly going back, you're backing into a corner with this.
Tax cuts. Those tax cuts delivered $2,000 in tax relief to the average family of four across America. And with regard to banning fracking, I just recommend that people look at the record. You yourself said repeatedly that you would ban fracking. You were the first Senate co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. And while Joe Biden denied the Green New Deal, Susan, thank you for pointing out the Green New Deal is on their campaign website.
He's such a dick.
And as USA Today said,
but he's like a funny dick. It's funny with it. He's got a little bit of Trump in him.
Said it's essentially the same plan as you co-sponsored with AOC when she submitted it in the Senate. And you just heard the senator say that she's going to resubmit America to the Paris Climate Accord.
That's a good thing.
The American people have always cherished our environment. We'll continue to cherish it. We've
Okay.
made great progress.
Notice how neither of them are talking about how we need to pressure China and India more for dumping diarrhea into the air.
Reducing CO2 emissions through American innovation and the development.
I'm almost like in guaranteement of if we pressure China and India to like not pollute as much, that like that would solve the problem.
Development of natural gas through fracking. We don't need a massive $2 trillion Green New Deal that would impose all new mandates on American.
So listen, back to this again. So here's the thing. I wanted you guys to like catch what's happening. Okay. So Trump decided to cut taxes, which when they say $2 trillion, it's $2 trillion over 10 years. $200 billion a year. When Donald Trump cut taxes, that was a $2 trillion cut, right? So that's $200 billion a year, right? In this instant, Joe Biden's expressing the idea of basically you increasing taxes, right? Do you understand my point? That's if he just theoretically, if he just cuts out Trump's thing, right? Trump's tax cuts, and then implements this Green New Deal, this version of it, theoretically, there will be job growth, right? And there'll be more jobs, just in a different way, I guess, in a more socialist way. But since we have an issue with our environment, it's fair to say that it makes sense to kind of do that. I'm just saying, dude, when it comes down to it, we can afford it. If you think that we can afford Trump's tax cuts, we can't afford the Green New Deal, or vice versa, you guys are kind of out of your minds. Like, just keep it in context. They're both the same price.
Businesses and American families.
Imagine thinking China and India are going to listen. Well, listen. Fucking make them listen. Listen, not for nothing, but before the whole coronavirus thing, Trump was doing a good job with the China shit. Okay? Honestly. So, let's keep that in context. I think it would have worked pretty well. That's like the only reason I would vote Trump, maybe, is because he was pressuring China in a pretty solid way. He was like nutting up and being like, no, you're not going to fuck with us. And it was working, and it probably would have worked.
Thank you.
Joe Biden wants us
Thank
to
you, Vice
retrofit
President.
4 million
Thank you, Vice
American
President.
business buildings. It makes no sense. It will cost
It might be
jobs.
extreme.
President Trump.
Thank
is
you,
gonna
Vice
put-
Wait, why would retrofitting buildings cost jobs? Wouldn't that create jobs? Don't you need people to work on things to make them? Or is your argument that those buildings will be shut down for a period of time so they can't work?
America first. He's going to put jobs first, and we're going to take care of our environment and follow the science.
Thank
But
you, Vice
on
President.
the issue of jobs,
He was asked about about listening to climate science, and the only thing he acknowledged from climate science was that we're going to listen, but like they haven't been doing that.
Senator Harris.
let's talk about that. The vice president earlier referred to, as part of what he thinks is an accomplishment, the president's trade war with China. You lost that trade war.
Well, because of the coronavirus. Let's give him a little be a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there.
You lost it. What ended up happening
We stalled it.
is because of
You can't really economically pressure China right now when we're in a fucking economic recession.
a so-called trade war with China, America lost 300,000 manufacturing jobs. Farmers have experienced bankruptcy because of it. We are in a manufacturing recession because of it. And when we look at where this administration has been, there are estimates that by the end of the term of this administration, they will have lost more jobs than almost any other presidential administration. And the American people know what I'm talking about. You know, I think about 20-year-olds. You know, we have
Whoa, she thinks about 20-year-olds. That's inappropriate. Also, like, enough of shitting on Trump for the economy. Like, it's because of the coronavirus. We've already gone through all this shit.
a 20-year-old, a 20-something-year-old who are
It's a little different. 20 and 20-something is very different.
coming out of high school and college right now, and you're wondering, is there going to be a job there for me? We're looking at people who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent by the end of the month. Almost half of American
Universal basic income for president.
renters are worried about whether they're going to be able to pay rent by the end of the month. This is where the economy is in America right now, and it is because of the catastrophe and the failure of leadership of
You guys, when I talk now, you're going to hear the fucking fire alarm here. Jesus Christ. All right, here's what I'm going to do. We got to pause for a second. I'm going to put this here. Because I have to wait for this. You guys can hear that. You can hear the howling, no? You guys can hear the howling? I'm going to play a couple of alerts. I'm just going to put this here so I know to cut this out of the fucking video.
Cutie.
Thank you. Oh, wait, it's already going down. Tactical nuke incoming.
Gummy Flintstone gummies. I want to eat and
Yes,
put myself into a
yes.
7-month coma for Pakistan.
What the fuck? All right, I think I can do one more alert because you guys can still hear the light humming. It's mostly gone. I don't remember what the hell we're talking about, but that's life, unfortunately.
this administration.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you just 15 seconds to respond because then I want to move on to our
Well,
next.
I'd love to respond. Look, lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden has been a cheerleader for communist China over the last several decades.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that Biden had a part to play in allowing China to be labeled as a developing country until like 2030. It's insane.
And again, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. When Joe Biden was vice president, we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs.
Listen, that was because we entered a horrible fucking recession. And the reality is that manufacturing jobs are going to continue to disappear because of technology driving down wages and displacing jobs. The Great Recession of 2007, 2008, that exacerbated an already existing problem of technology and robotics. Okay, and once everything went to shit, the big businesses were like, you know what? Let's invest into robotics. It's cheap. Let's just say screw it. We're going to cut costs in the long term by firing people. Okay, you go to any fast food. You can, but not that. I was going to say fast food. We can go to any grocery store and you see self-checkout lines, right? You got one person running 4 to 8 self-checkouts. That's 3 to 7 jobs that you don't need. That's a lot of money. Even if it's minimum wage. Every minimum wage is different. But let's just say it's $10 an hour. For $70 an hour right there that you're saving, right? Over the course of an 8-hour shift, is that $560? You get my point? It's just continuous. And once you invest in this technology, it requires less maintenance than it costs to pay for these people, plus insurance that you may have to provide. You understand what I'm saying?
And President Obama said they were never coming back. He said we needed a magic wand to bring them back. In our first 3 years after we cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed...
By the way, that magic wand was cutting tax. And let's be honest, some of the jobs that we kept, these manufacturers, they only exist, they were only kept temporarily because, again, technological issue, the technology issue of displacing jobs and driving down wages was there. All right? Outsourcing has increased too. Okay, so this guy said wrong. Outsourcing has increased significantly. Manufacturing has just been displaced. Technology had little impact. Incorrect. I'm going to explain to you why. Right? The reason outsourcing increased is because outsourcing is cheaper than technology. So it's people in the United States technology outsourcing. So if they have the opportunity to outsource, yeah, they're going to do that before technology. But before they rehire in America, they're going to go towards technology. It's about getting cheaper. Like when you outsource, you're paying people like a bullshit fucking wage to provide these things. The only way in America to bring these manufacturing jobs back to America, honestly, is either allowing the use of technology, like robotics and whatnot, or people getting paid inhumane wages. Honestly. So technology is a big issue. It's displacing a ton of jobs. Amazon is technology. It's destroying businesses, like brick and mortar businesses. It's going to get worse now. They're up to almost $1 trillion company because of the coronavirus. It's great that they provided a service, but it's another instance of technology being an issue, and then boom, a recession hits, and all of a sudden technology bursts to the forefront and fucks us. Okay, you guys got to keep all this in mind. It's more nuanced, but I'm just just bringing this to light, guys.
American energy. This administration saw 500,000 manufacturing jobs created. And that's exactly the kind of growth we're going to continue to see as we bring our nation through this pandemic. But a Green New Deal, your massive new mandate.
Shut up, Pence. I'm tired of you over talking.
Kill jobs this time, just like it killed.
I'm going to fart in my own mouth.
I just need to respond very briefly.
15 seconds.
This moderator kind of sucks. I'm just saying.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wish Christopher Wallace did this. Yeah.
Joe Biden is responsible for saving America's auto industry, and you voted against it. So let's set the record straight. Thank you.
I'd like to talk about
that was concise.
China. We have, as our next topic, we have no more complicated or consequential foreign relationship than the one with China. It is a huge market for American agricultural goods. It's a potential partner in dealing with climate change in North Korea. And in a video tonight, President Trump again blamed it for the coronavirus, saying China will pay. Vice President Pence, how would you describe our fundamental relationship with China?
So let me kind of just, before we get into this, I want to bring something forward Because I know a lot of people at home are sitting there going, okay, this is a reason why, right? So the foundation of that is like Trump is railing against China, but basically we can't necessarily do that to preserve a partnership with China that we need, right? The problem, and then a lot of progressives will agree with that. Like, that makes perfect sense. I agree. The thing is that when the beginning of this whole thing, when like China wasn't being upfront about it and Trump was giving them too much of the benefit of the doubt, that's another part where people are criticizing Trump for it. So they're going to criticize him when he's too friendly with China, and they're going to criticize him when he's not friendly enough with China. And it's a little bit, in my opinion, kind of like, it's cognitive dissonance to me. I'm just being honest, you know. You can't rail against Trump for being too generous to China when we need to maintain relations, but then rail against him when he's not generous enough to maintain relations. You guys understand what I'm saying?
Competitors, adversaries, enemies, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Susan. Well, before I leave that, let me speak to voting records if I can. You know, everybody knows that NAFTA cost literally thousands of American factories to close. We saw automotive jobs go south.
Sure, those jobs went to, you know, cheaper people that were able to do the job for less because they weren't getting, there was no human well, the standard of what it is to be treated like a human is much lower.
The border, President Trump fought to renegotiate NAFTA. And the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement is now the law of the land. American people deserve.
I think even Bernie Sanders was against NAFTA, I think.
No. Senator Kamala Harris was one of only 10 members of the Senate to vote against the USMCA. It was a huge win for American auto workers. It was a huge win for American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change, that you put your radical environmental agenda ahead of American auto workers and ahead of American jobs. The American people deserve to know that. It's probably why Newsweek magazine said that Kamala Harris was the most liberal member of the United States Senate in 2019, more liberal than Bernie Sanders, more liberal than any of the others in the United States Senate. So now with regard to China.
It's so fun how, like, you know, because you know these debates, for more than anything else, are for like independents to watch and like undecided voters, because, you know, a lot of people have already decided they're voting for it. And it's so funny to watch, you know, Trump and Pence throw shade at, you know, Biden and Kamala. Sorry, I got called a boomer for saying Kamala. For being too progressive. And it's funny because like independents are turned off by that, but at the same time they have to maintain their base to an extent. So then you see the offset of like Kamala and Biden are like, I'm progressive, but no, like they're trying to grab both votes. It's just so funny how this shit works out, man. It's just like it's a zoo.
Look, Susan, first and foremost, China is to blame for the coronavirus.
True.
And President Trump is not happy about it. He's made that very clear. Made it clear again today.
That's true.
China and the World Health Organization do not.
You know, I know I keep pausing it, but like just for context, like when he said like China virus, I never thought that was racist or xenophobic. I honestly, like, the way I felt about the whole China virus label was like, the reality is that like there's nothing we can do to China right now. We can't stress them economically for causing this, for them causing this recession. So like, all we could do is shame them. So be it.
Play straight with the American people. They did not let our personnel into China to get information on the coronavirus until the middle of February. Fortunately, President Trump, in dealing with China from the outset of this administration, standing up to China that had been taking advantage of America for decades in the wake of...
Someone asked in the chat, how is it China's fault? It could have happened anywhere. So, like, obviously, I'm not going to give into, like, the idea of some conspiracy theory that China manufactured it. I think there's some evidence or there's some suggestion that China may have, like, been trying to beat the virus and then it got out of a lab. I don't really care about that. The reality is that the reason that China is to blame for it isn't necessarily because China is the origin point of it. It's because China did a lot since, like, before December to suppress the knowledge that it was even there. They were like locking people into, like, they're corralling people up, while they were effectively trying to quarantine them harshly. They were lying to people about what they were doing. They even killed, and this was all on NPR, like a doctor who tried to expose what was going on. It's insane what they did. They were welding doors shut. It was fucked up, man. They were treating their people like shit. It was fucked up. That's why China is to blame. All right, if they told us sooner, we might have actually been able to have a response. that would actually have greatly reduced lives. We could have been imagine we had an extra 3 months to prepare for this. Just imagine we had an extra 3 months to prepare for this, man. China fucked us, man. And they fucked their people. And nobody's really talking about it.
Biden's cheerleading for China. President Trump made that decision before the end of January to suspend all travel from China. And again, the American people deserve to know Joe Biden opposed President Trump's decision to suspend all travel from China. He said it was hysterical. He said it was
Thank you, Vice President
xenophobic.
Pence.
But President Trump has
Vice President
stood
Pence,
up
your
to
time is
China.
up.
We're going to continue to stand strong.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
We want to improve the relationship, but we're going to level the playing field.
tell them to
We're
shut the
gonna hold
fuck up.
China accountable for what they did to America with the
Honestly, I'm not trying to be that guy, but like, I don't think that a woman moderator, it's not even her fault. But like, I think that there's a level of Pence. He's a very traditional man. I just think that there's part of Pence that just doesn't respect women. And like, maybe I'm being wrong here, but like, I don't know, man. You know, I'm just saying that he's just not listening. Hopefully I said Pence instead of Biden, but you get what I'm saying.
coronavirus.
Thank you. Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked the Vice President. How would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Are we competitors, adversaries, enemies?
Lovers'
You'll have
quarrel.
2 minutes uninterrupted.
Susan, the Trump administration's perspective and approach to China has resulted in the loss of American lives, American jobs, and America's standing. There's a weird obsession that President Trump has had with getting rid of whatever accomplishment was achieved by President Obama and Vice President Biden. For example, they created within the White House an office that basically was responsible for monitoring pandemics. They got rid of it.
Not true.
There was a team of disease experts
Is that true?
that President Obama and Vice President Biden dispatched to China to monitor what is now predictable and what might happen. They pulled them out. We now are looking
That is true.
at
Jesus Christ.
210,000 Americans who have lost their lives.
That's not what I want to do.
Let's look at the job situation. We mentioned before the trade deal, the trade war, they wanted to call it, with China. It resulted in the loss of over 300 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing recession, and the American consumer paying thousands of dollars more for goods because of that failed war that they called it. Then let's talk about standing. Pew, a reputable research firm, has done an analysis that shows that leaders of all of our formerly allied countries have now decided that they hold in greater esteem and respect Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, than they do Donald Trump, the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States. This is where we are today because of a failure of leadership by this administration.
Senator Harris, we've seen changes in the role of the United States in terms of global leadership over the past 4 years. And of course, times do change. What's your definition? We've seen strains with China, of course.
What the hell's happening?
As the Vice President mentioned, we've seen strains with our traditional allies.
Was that like a weird fuck up in like the audio?
In NATO and elsewhere. What is your definition of the role of American leadership in 2020?
So,
Go back?
We've seen strains with our traditional allies in NATO and elsewhere. What is your definition of the role of American leadership in 2020?
So, you know, Joe is, I love talking with Joe about a lot of these issues. And, you know, Joe, I think he said it quite well. He says, you know, foreign policy, it might sound complicated, but really it's relationships. So just think about it as relationships. And so we know this in our personal and professional relationships. You got to keep your word to your friends. You got to be loyal to your friends. People who've stood with you, got to stand with them. You got to know who your adversaries are and keep them in check. But what we have seen with Donald Trump is that he has betrayed our friends and embraced dictators around the world.
It's a level of
Let's take,
truth
for
to that.
example, Russia. So, Russia, I serve on the Intelligence Committee of the United States Senate. America's intelligence community told us Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States in 2016 and is playing in 2020. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, said the same. But Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief of the United States of America, prefers to take the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the American intelligence community. You look at our friends at NATO. He has walked away from agreements. You can look at the Iran nuclear deal, which now has put us in a position where we are less safe because they are building up what might end up being a significant nuclear arsenal.
So, like, let's be honest here. I know there's some people out there like, oh, those deals suck, whatever. Like, honestly, though, like, the life isn't about getting exactly what you want. Life's about compromise, right? We could talk about the Iran deal. Maybe it wasn't perfect, whatever. People talk about how we gave them money. We really just released their money back to them. That was how that worked. They weren't producing any nuclear arms. All of our allies had maintained that fact, and Trump just decided that they were, with no evidence in any capacity. He then pulled out of the deal. Iran stayed in the deal out of good faith as Trump continued to pressure them with sanctions until they got to a point where they couldn't handle it anymore, and they started producing weapons again. That's just kind of the reality of the situation, man.
We were in that deal, guys. We were in the Iran nuclear deal with friends, with allies around the country. And because of Donald Trump's unilateral approach to foreign policy, coupled with his isolationism, he pulled us out and has made America less safe. So, Susan, it's
Not even just that, just made America's word look like poo-poo.
It's about relationships. And the thing that has always been part of the strength of our nation, in addition to our great military, has been that we keep our word. But Donald Trump doesn't understand that because he doesn't understand what it means to be honest.
Thank you, thank
or
you,
maybe.
thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you a chance.
He certainly, you could certainly make the argument that he doesn't understand that when you, as a president, you are the president of the United States, and like you're a president first, human second. And like I understand shifting things, but like, you know, we need to maintain the president's word, honestly.
Wants to respond.
Well, thank you. Well, President Trump kept his word when we moved the American embassy to Jerusalem,
That's fine.
the capital of the state of Israel.
It's not as big of a deal to me as like actual promises, you know?
When Joe Biden was vice president, they promised to do that, and they never did. We've stood strong with our allies, but we've been demanding. NATO is now contributing more to our common defense than ever before, thanks to
that's
President
fair.
Trump's leadership. We've strengthened our alliances across the Asia Pacific, and we've stood strong against those who would do us harm. You know, when President Trump came into office, ISIS had captured an area of the Middle East the size of Pennsylvania. But President Trump unleashed the American military, and our armed forces destroyed the ISIS caliphate and took down their leader, al-Baghdadi, without one American casualty. Al-Baghdadi was responsible for the death of thousands. But notably, America's hearts today are with the family of Kayla Mueller, her parents of which are here with us tonight in Salt Lake City. Today, 2 of the ISIS killers responsible for Kayla Mueller's murder were brought to justice in the United States. Jihadi John was killed on the battlefield along with the other beetle. The reality is that when Joe Biden was vice president, we had an opportunity to save Kayla Mueller. It breaks my heart to reflect on it, but the military came into the Oval Office, presented a plan. They said they knew where Kayla was. Baghdadi had held her for 18 months, abused her mercilessly before they killed her. But when Joe Biden was vice president, they hesitated for a month. And when armed forces finally went in, it was clear she'd been moved 2 days earlier. And her family says with a heart that broke the heart of every American that if President Donald Trump had been president, they believe Kayla would be alive today.
Thank you, Vice
Look, we
President.
destroyed the ISIS caliphate. And you talk about re-entering the Iran nuclear deal. I mean, the last administration transferred $1.8 billion to the leading state sponsor
Thank you, Vice
of
President.
terrorism, President Donald Trump got us
And again, that's a fair criticism, but like that was re-releasing their own money back to them.
out of the deal.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
And when
And again, the deal worked, even if we weren't happy with it. That's what a compromise is. A compromise is when no one's happy. You guys have to understand that. A compromise isn't when everybody's happy. A compromise is when fucking no one is happy. Okay?
Qasem Soleimani was traveling to Baghdad
Thank you,
to do
Vice President
harm
Pence.
to Americans, President Donald Trump took
Thank you,
him
Vice
out.
President Pence.
So, by the way, with Soleimani, I believe that's the guy where like Trump fucking, I believe he bombed him or took him out, and like it was a dumb idea. Let's just be honest. It was really dumb to do that because it made no sense, and it had the possibility to destabilize the Middle East. But like it didn't. It worked. No, it worked. People are like, yeah, it worked. No, it did. It's insane that it even worked. Like he never should have done it, but like it fucking paid off, and Trump looks good for it now, and it's fucking bananas. The balls on that man, it's insane. I'm just saying, it's nuts. It shouldn't have worked, and it did, and it made him look good. But Jesus,
And America is safer. Our allies.
no, it made him look good. There were no repercussions. Like people, So here's the thing: people gave him shit for it, right? Especially in the beginning. But then they shut the fuck up when they realized it worked, and they didn't report in the media like, "Oh, it worked. I guess we should trust Trump." No. Every time Trump does something decent, they leave it out. Like, no progressive media is talking about how like Trump's economic recovery from the coronavirus is much stronger and moving up faster than projected. No one's talking about how he somehow pulled a fucking W from taking out Soleimani. It's nuts, and that's the honest truth, man. Like, it's hard for us to really. This is why conservatives don't like the media, because like anytime Trump does something well, they don't give a shit. And someone said to explain how it worked. Like Soleimani was like a terrorist, so. Here's the thing: when we took him out, the projection was like there was going to be a massive impact, destabilization in the Middle East. It was going to be none of that happened. There was no repercussions for it, so it worked. There was no repercussions for it. That's how it worked. We all assumed there would be. There wasn't. He got it to work, and he looks good for it. Nobody talks about it, but he looks good for it now. Honestly, just saying, we got to be contextually accurate. Like, he was a bad guy, Soleimani. We just decided not to take him out for a long time because we thought there would be backlash, and there wasn't. It's nuts. It never should have worked, but it did. Got to give him credit for it.
Allies are safer, and the American people know President Donald Trump will never
Thank you, Vice President
take
Pence.
action.
I would like to give Senator Harris a chance to respond, but not at such great length because, of course, there are other topics we want to talk
Yeah, why don't you talk less than that man? Shut up, Harris.
about.
But I would like equal time.
Yes,
Thank you.
please go ahead.
First of all, to the Mueller family, I know about your daughter's case, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What happened to her is awful, and it should have never happened. And I know Joe feels the same way. And I know that President Obama feels the same way.
I mean, listen, I'm not too educated on the Mueller thing, but like, we can feel the way that we want, but if they did fuck up, and I don't know too much about the story, but if they did fuck up and they didn't move when they should have, sorries don't bring back American lives. I'm just being honest with you.
But you mentioned Soleimani. Let's start there. So after the strike on Soleimani, there was a counter strike on our troops in Iraq. And they suffered serious brain injuries. And do you know what Donald Trump dismissed them as? Headaches. And this is about a pattern of Donald Trump's, where he has referred to our men who are serving in our military as suckers and losers. Donald Trump, who went to Arlington Cemetery.
So, like, when they're talking about the retaliation or something, like, there was retaliation, but listen, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but that was the extent of the retaliation, and it's not good, but, like, it's still a net win. I'm not trying to be an asshole, guys. I'm just being honest with you. It's a tough take, but it was a net win.
And stood above the
And, like, I don't think anyone actually died from it. I'm just saying, man.
graves of our fallen heroes and said, what's in it for them? Because, of course, he only thinks about what's in it for him. Let's take what he said about John McCain, a great American hero.
That's true.
And Donald Trump
Doesn't give a
says
fuck about McCain, though.
he doesn't deserve to be called a hero because he was a prisoner of war. And this is very.
It's true, man. Trump was an asshole to McCain. And he wasn't just an asshole to him. Like, he actively diminished him in his role as like a soldier.
Important when you want to talk about who is the current commander-in-chief and what they care about and what they don't care about. Public reporting that Russia had bounties on the heads of American soldiers. And you know what a bounty is? It's somebody puts a price on your head and they will pay it if you are killed.
Like, I know what about. I'm only laughing because, like, before she educated us on what debt was, and now she's educating us on what a bounty is. And I just feel like these are things that, like, we know. Like, it's common knowledge, right? Maybe I'm it's just silly to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a poopy butt.
And Donald Trump had talked at least 6 times to Vladimir Putin and never brought up the subject. Joe Biden would never do that.
Thank
Joe
you.
Biden would, but Joe Biden would hold Russia to account for any threat to our nation's security or to our troops who are sacrificing their lives for the sake of our democracy
Pakistan.
and our safety.
Thank you, Senator Harris. This is such an important issue, but we have other important issues as well. And
Susan,
I want
That's
to
true. She never educated us on what tariffs were.
make sure we have a chance
I really
to
have
talk
to
about.
respond to that.
I'm-
Look, she has
15 seconds because
Well, I gotta
we're
have
trying
more
to
than
keep.
that. Look.
Well, I'm sorry.
He just bullied his way into getting time. He's like, I want more time. It's kind of childish.
Right, but Vice President
Look,
Pence, you've had more time than she's had
the
so far.
slanders against President Donald Trump
Those are generally true, though.
regarding men and women of our armed forces are absurd.
I'm sorry, Vice
My
President
son is
Pence.
a captain in the United
Yes.
States Marine Corps.
come
My
on,
son-in-law
dog.
is deployed in the United States Navy.
Like, listen, here's the thing. Once they go on to the next topic, you have time to respond to however the fuck you want. Talk about it then. Write it down in your little notebook. Talk about it then. Stop bullying your way into more time. And everybody agreed on the terms, and everybody's full of shit. To be honest with you, Pence isn't interrupting far more than Camila. It's just like the watered-down presidential debate, honestly.
I can assure
And vice presidents are watered-down presidents.
all of you, with sons and daughters serving in our military, President Donald Trump not only respects but reveres all of those who serve in our armed forces, and any suggestion otherwise is ridiculous.
But
Let
thank
me
you,
also
Vice President
say
Pence.
the
Vice
the
President
American
Pence,
people deserve,
Vice
Susan, the
President
American
Pence,
people deserve
I
Oh
didn't,
my God.
Vice President Pence, I did not, excuse me,
Susan, the
I did
American
not
people
create
deserve
the
to know
rules for tonight.
Joe Biden
Your
and Trump-
campaigns agreed to the rules for tonight's
I-
debate with the Commission on Presidential
Just
Debates.
shut the fuck
I'm here
up,
to
Pence.
enforce them, which involves moving from one topic to another, giving roughly equal time to both of you,
Go right ahead.
which is what I'm trying very hard to do.
Go right ahead.
So I want to go ahead and move to the next
we
topic,
did it.
which is an important one, as the last topic was, and that is the Supreme Court. On Monday, the Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled to open hearings on Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. Senator Harris, you'll be there as a member of the committee. Her confirmation would cement the court's conservative majority and make it likely open
It's just funny because some of my chats, like, he gave her permissions to go ahead. She wouldn't have been able to do that before that. Like, it just made me chuckle.
to more abortion restrictions, even to overturning the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling. Access to abortion would then be up to the states. Vice President Pence, you're the former governor of Indiana. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want Indiana to do? Would you want your home state to ban all abortions?
So here's the thing, man. I just have to be, like, honest with you. You might be pro-life, you might be pro-choice. I'm going to give you a tough take because I'm pro-choice, and I'm going to tell you why. At the end of the day, my rule set and my rule set, my rationale for things are, how do we get society to move forward in the best way? And I acknowledge that there's no perfect solution when it comes to literally anything. No good deed goes unpunished. There's no solution you can propose to any problem that won't have a negative in some capacity. Of course, sometimes they're better or worse. The reality is that if we decided to make abortion illegal, right? We do roughly 900,000 abortions a year in the United States, right? So of course it's going to lower that number. So let's say it lowers it to 90,000, 10% of them, right? Right? Because it's going to discourage people from actually having kids, right? So let's say instead of 900,000 babies being born or being aborted a year, that number would jump down to 90,000 being born a year because people would simply be like, oh, abortion is illegal. We have to stop having kids, right? 90,000 people are most likely from most people who get an abortion is for economic reasons. A lot of people who are poor get abortions. And honestly, constantly getting pregnant and not giving a shit comes from poverty and lack of education. So you're going to have a lot of poor, dumb people having kids, and they're either going to go into the foster care system or they're going to be on some kind of a welfare program. And now you're going to see a spike in the cost of foster care system and the welfare program. Foster care system, which is already oversaturated and already having problems managing the children in there, or rather managing their resources. And you're going to see more welfare, which we already acknowledge is not a net positive. So like would bankrupt us. And it's not a fun take. It's not, but like society would go bankrupt without the legalization of abortions. And we definitely need more social restrictions on things. We have to differentiate laws and social restrictions, right? Governmental restrictions versus social restrictions, okay? This is where we kind of go through this gap. And let me give you like a little bit of an analogy here, right? So for instance, people don't like hate speech, right? So people propose banning hate speech. You can't do that. It's a slippery slope. So we can't do governmental restrictions on banning hate speech, right? But we can do social restrictions to make sure that people who propagate hate speech are punished in some social capacity. The same thing needs to happen with abortion to an extent. We can't make abortions illegal, but there should be more social stigma on it to the extent of like, hey, we get it. You had an abortion. You shouldn't have gotten to that point. You need to be safer. You shouldn't. It should be seen as a necessary evil in a last case, not as a fucking form of birth control, right? You get what I'm saying? We need to find the line between like the social stigma. That's what I'm trying to say. It's an uncomfortable topic. I think that we need to talk about it more in the right way. But unfortunately, abortion is necessary for the propagation of an advanced society. And that's a hard take, and that's just the way I'm looking at it, man.
You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, thank you for the question, but I'll use a little bit of my time to respond to that very important issue before.
Well, hurry up.
The American people deserve to know Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, was responsible for the death of hundreds of American service members. When the opportunity came, we saw him headed to Baghdad to kill more Americans. President Trump didn't hesitate. And Qasem Soleimani is gone.
It's nuts how they put these offers on the table. What should we do about Soleimani? For some reason, they take him out on the fucking ticket, man. Again, it paid off.
But you deserve to know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually criticized the decision to take out Qasem Soleimani.
Most progressives did because like nobody thought it would like not. It really didn't have any backlash, but
It's really inexplicable. But with regard to Joe Biden, it's
not inexplicable. We thought that there would be a huge backlash from it, but there really wasn't. So now they get to parade that around as a
because history
win.
records that Joe Biden actually opposed the raid against Osama bin Laden. It's absolutely essential that we have a commander-in-chief who will not hesitate to act to protect American lives and to protect American service members, and that's what you have in President Donald Trump. Now, with regard to the Supreme Court of the United States, let me say President Trump and I could not be more enthusiastic about the opportunity to see Judge Amy Coney Barrett become Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Now, she's a brilliant woman, and she will bring a lifetime of experience and a sizable American family to the Supreme Court of the United States. And our hope is, in the hearing next week, unlike Justice Kavanaugh received with treatment from you and others.
Oh man, Justice Kavanaugh! If only I was doing this during. That was a shit show. Maybe we'll talk about that one day.
We hope she gets a fair hearing, and we particularly hope that we don't see the kind of attacks on her Christian faith that we saw before. I mean, the Democrat chairman of the Judiciary Committee before, when Judge Barrett was being confirmed for the Court of Appeals, expressed concern that the dogma of her faith lived loudly in her. Dick Durbin of Illinois said that...
I mean, let's be honest here. People who are very religious don't like abortions, and they don't like gay people. And that's a bad thing, in my opinion. So, like, that expression of concern of, like, hey, you're very religious, is that going to make it so that you try to reverse gay marriage or abortion? It's relevant information, guys. It's relevant.
But it was a concern Senator, I know one of our judicial nominees you actually attacked because they were a member of the Catholic Knights of Columbus, just because the Knights of Columbus holds pro-life views and
Thank you.
pro-marriage views.
Thank you, Vice President
So
Pence. Your
my
time
hope
is
is
up.
that when the hearing takes place, that
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
that Judge Amy Coney Barrett
Hurry
will be
up, Pence.
respected,
Thank you,
treated
Vice President.
You could have gotten this out in so much more concisely than you did. I don't understand why you're dragging your fucking words. Just come on.
President
respectfully
Pence.
voted and confirmed.
Blah,
by the
Blah, blah,
Supreme
blah, blah,
Court
blah,
of the
blah,
United
blah,
States.
blah.
Senator Harris, you're the senator from and former Attorney General of California. So let me ask you a parallel question to the one I posed to the Vice President. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want California to do? Would you want your home state to enact no restrictions on access to abortion?
That's a good
And you
question.
have 2 minutes
That's a good question.
uninterrupted.
This one's harder
Thank
for
you,
her than
Susan.
him.
First of
than
all,
this was for him.
Joe Biden and I are both people of faith,
That's nice.
and it's insulting to suggest that we would knock anyone for their faith.
So yeah, no, I know that Kamala, that she doesn't cut Kamala off like that, but Kamala's also a bit more respectful of the time that she's given than Pence is.
And in fact, Joe, if elected, will be only the second practicing Catholic as president of the United States.
That's nice.
On the issue of this nomination, Joe and I are very clear, as are the majority of the American people. We are 27 days before the decision about who will be the next president of the
Well,
United
no, but I want you to answer the question
you know-
of like unregulated abortion.
States. Before, and when this conversation has come up, it's been
Because
about-
for me, I'm very much like a first trimester guy, maybe 15 weeks. Right, I understand the necessity for abortion potentially in the second, maybe even third trimester if it's like threatening to the mother's life. I think that we could have a conversation where generally people in general will say like, yeah, I believe in body autonomy. They'll talk about how like you shouldn't have to give up your heart for somebody else. I think that's a kind of a relevant conversation when it comes to abortion. I understand that it's much more nuanced than that. I'm just saying here, but like, answer the fucking question.
about election year or election time. We're literally in an election. Over 4 million people have voted. People are in the process of voting right now. And so Joe has been very clear, as the American people are. Let the American people fill that seat in the White House.
This is so insane because like it's so crazy because well, first of all, yeah, where the fuck is the fly? Did they edit the fly out of this whole thing? That's first and foremost. Second of all, they're asked a question. She was asked a very specific question, like, "Hey, do you believe in unregulated abortion? Unregulated abortions?" That's what she was effectively asked, and now she's like she's walking all around the problem, and like she won't answer no because, and I doubt that she believes in that, but because there's so many very, very, very left-wing progressives that are like all over it, that are like, yeah, we should have unregulated abortions. There are some people in the very, very far left that she just doesn't want to ostracize them from voting for her.
And then we'll
Biden.
fill that seat on the United States Supreme Court. And to your point, Susan, the issues before us couldn't be more serious. There's the issue of choice, and I will always fight for a woman's right to make a decision about her own body. It should be her decision and not that of Donald Trump and the Vice President, Michael Pence. But let's also look at what else is before the court. It's the Affordable Care Act. Like, literally in the midst of a public health pandemic, when over 210,000 people have died and 7 million people probably have what will be in the future considered a pre-existing condition because you contracted the virus.
Where the fuck is the
Donald
fly?
Trump is in court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And
It's
I
true.
said it before, and it bears repeating. This means that there will be no more protection
the
if they
fly?
win for people with pre-existing conditions. This means that over
That is what
20 million people
See, the
will
problem
lose-
is he keeps nodding his head no. The problem is that it's been more than 3.5 years, and you still haven't produced anything. So how can you say no when you have nothing in general?
lose your coverage. It means that if you're under the age of 26, you can't stay on your parents' coverage anymore.
That would be what it would mean.
And here's the thing. The contrast couldn't be more clear. They're trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Joe Biden is saying, let's expand coverage. Let's give you a choice.
Cut
of
her
public
off.
option or private
Treat her
coverage.
fairly.
Let's bring down premiums.
Senator
Let's
Harris.
lower Medicare
You didn't answer the
eligibility to
question,
60.
but
Thank
fine.
you, Senator.
That's true leadership.
You know, you mentioned earlier, Vice President Pence. That
You
the
know
pres-
what, though? Maybe they did. Maybe they did edit the fly out, And that's why Fox News has the video down in general, because for some reason they don't want the fly in there. How fucking nuts would that be?
The president was committed to maintaining protections for people with pre-existing conditions. But you do have this court case that you are supporting, your administration supporting, that would strike down the Affordable Care Act. The president says, President Trump says that he's going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he has not explained how he would do that.
He hasn't even proposed
and that was
anything.
one of the toughest nuts to crack when they were passing the Affordable Care Act. So tell us specifically, how would your administration protect Americans with pre-existing conditions to have access to affordable insurance if the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just say, addressing your very first question, I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human
Oh
life.
my God. Just
I'm
answer the
pro-life.
question
I
about
don't
pre-existing
apologize
conditions,
for
you
it.
motherfucker.
And this is another one of those cases where
Go
there's such a dramatic
on.
contrast. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris support taxpayer funding of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth.
So two things. First and foremost, taxpayer-funded abortion. You guys need to know what that means, because what he says it means is not what he's inferring that it means is not what it actually means. So taxpayer funding of abortions is effectively, I think it's called Title X. I might be wrong with that. Basically, when you have government insurance, is the government covering that if it's deemed a necessary thing? That's it. Okay, it's not like the direct subsidization. It's just like it's part of the insurance package. That's pretty much it. And to move on, my understanding is, because I think Title X only protects it if it's absolutely necessary. My understanding is Planned Parenthood gets like 50% of its financing from like donations, and they use that money on abortions rather than using government money, unless it falls under that like category of absolute necessity. I believe that is what it is. It's not like just this rampant use of it. I'm just letting you guys know. I think that abortions take up about 7% of what they do. I don't know if that's a cost split or just like 7% of the procedures they do, but I can't imagine that it's, you get my point. I can't imagine that they spend that much money on it where it would exceed half of it.
Late-term abortion. They want to increase funding to Planned Parenthood of America. Now, for our part, I would never presume how Judge Amy Coney Barrett would rule on the Supreme Court of the United States, but we'll continue to stand strong for the right to life. When you speak about the Supreme Court, though, I think the American people really deserve an answer, Senator Harris. Are you and Joe Biden going to pack the court if Judge Amy...
Oh, yeah. Also, there's been no expression from Kamala Harris to make abortion up to late term unregulated in the way that he's inferring.
Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed. I mean, there have been 29 vacancies on the Supreme Court during presidential election years, from George Washington to Barack Obama. Presidents have nominated in all.
No, she hasn't denied it. You have a very good point, which is a problem I'm having with her. She seems to be refusing to deny it, to play to her very, very, very left-wing base. So it's not a good thing. Also, if she got into the complexities of it, in I think California and New York, and maybe another state or two, you actually can have an abortion up till like birth if like it's deemed absolutely medically necessary, if it infringes on the mother's life in some capacity. So like that's a hard thing to press.
9 cases, but your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9 seats for 150 years, if you don't get your way. This is a classic case of if you can't win by the rules, you're going to change the rules. Now, you've refused to answer the question. Joe Biden has refused to answer the question. So I think the American people would really like to know, if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States, are you and Joe Biden, if somehow you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court to get your way?
So they've been talking about packing the Supreme Court, because technically there just needs to be a Supreme Court. The number of people isn't really there. Apparently we've had upwards of 10 and as low as 6. Me personally, when it comes to Supreme Court, I take it in a different direction. I really just think that like every president should be able to elect their own justice, and like 28-year terms. Not every president, every term that a president serves. We'll have them elect their own thing. Have them elect their own their own court justice, right? And that's fair. So if you're in, it makes a lot more sense to me.
I'm so glad we went through a little history lesson. Let's do that a little more. In 1864...
Well, I'd like you to answer the question.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking. Okay. In 1864, one of the
Now, my people in my chat are saying that this is an unsubstantiated claim from Abraham Lincoln. I simply don't know, and I don't care enough about the anecdote to look into it.
I think
Just
political
keep it in
heroes,
mind, though.
certainly of the president, I assume of you also, Mr. Vice President, is Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election, and it was 27 days before the election, and a seat became open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do. The American people deserve to make the decision about who will be the next president of the United States, and then that person can select who will serve for a lifetime on the highest court of our land. And so Joe and I are very clear. The American people are voting right now, and it should be their decision about who will serve on this most important body for a lifetime.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
All right, so really quick, just for context, 'cause I had to look it up because you guys were. All right, if you are on Medicaid or Medicare, if you're on like governmental insurance, this is the where it comes from for government-funded abortions. The only way that you're able to get it is if there's like a threat to the mom's life, incest or sexual assault. There you go. That's it. It's the only way that they'll cover it. Just needed to go through that really quick. Yeah.
Susan are voting right now. They'd like to know if you and Joe Biden are going to pack the Supreme Court if you don't get your way in this nomination.
Let's talk about packing.
You once
Come
again
on.
gave a non-answer. Joe Biden gave a non-answer.
Trying to answer you
the
now.
American people deserve a straight answer. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the straight answer is they are going to pack the Supreme Court if they somehow win this election.
They might.
Men and
Mr.
women,
Vice President,
I got to
I
tell you,
think
people across this country, if you cherish our Supreme Court, if you cherish the
You could just say no, Miss Kamala Harris.
separation of powers, you need to reject the Biden-Harris ticket.
I bet Pence would like to pack her court. Am I right?
Come November the 3rd, re-elect
Pack my
President
court,
Donald Trump,
baby.
and we'll stand by that separation of
yeah,
powers.
Pence,
and
pack my court.
Supreme Court.
Yeah, let's talk about packing the court then.
Oh yeah, pack
Talk
my
about
court,
it.
baby.
I'm about to.
Pack my
So-
court, baby.
The Trump-Pence administration has been, because I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Susan, as you mentioned,
Me too. Yeah.
and I've witnessed the appointments for lifetime appointments to the federal courts, district courts, courts of appeal. People who are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by legal professional organizations and found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50 people who President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is black? This is what they've been.
I mean, listen, that's some identity politics shit. I don't know, man. Like, are we really gonna do like? Is that a qualifier now? Like, you have to be like, come on. I don't know. Like, it's a complicated thing, but come on. They weren't black, so he's racist. You know, I think a big problem in America is that people of color don't have the access to opportunity to get to this point to be elected as a judge. Not that they aren't being elected as judges. The opportunity simply isn't there for them to climb that ladder. So we need to focus on that, building that ladder for people with less opportunity, rather than making sure that the people that have already climbed the ladder, you know what I'm saying? Were there like qualified individuals, or were there qualified conservative judges that were black that would have been able to fill that? Because we have to keep in mind, if they don't have the conservative values, conservatives aren't going to vote them in. Okay, it's not like Democrats are going to be like, well, we only have one black person, but he's conservative, we're going to have to vote him in. No, you're going to vote for somebody who's going to represent your interests. Whether that's fucked up or not is a separate issue. So come on, come on.
Doing. You want to talk about packing a court? Let's have that discussion.
Pack these
All right,
notes.
thank you, Senator. Let's go on. And
That's
talk
all. That was her response. You want to talk about packing the court? No one's black. Got him. You're done, Pence. You're a racist. He might be, actually, but I don't know if it's for that reason per se.
about the issue of racial justice.
I just want the record to reflect she never answered the question. So
Thank
maybe
you.
the next debate, Joe Biden will answer the question.
you,
But I think
thank
the
you.
American people know that.
Thank you, Vice President. In March,
Jesus.
Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician in Louisville, was shot and killed after police officers executing a search warrant in a narcotic.
You know, it's so interesting because like she used to be an EMT, we thought, and then people were like, no, she wasn't. She was actually fired. But then it turns out she was like an emergency room technician, and it's like it's still like a solid job. So the why I bring it there is because, you know, oftentimes people will diminish somebody. It's like, well, she was just a drug dealer, bro. She like, listen, all speculation aside, you know, I understand that there were ties and whatnot, but like she wasn't like this shitty asshole. Like, she worked the job.
Investigation broke into her apartment. The police said they identified themselves. Taylor's boyfriend said he didn't hear them do that. He used a gun registered to him to fire a shot,
Legally
which wounded
obtained?
an officer. The officers then fired more than 20 rounds into the apartment. They say they were acting in self-defense. None of them have been indicted in connection with her death. Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor,
You ready for this?
was justice done? You have 2 minutes.
Before we get into this, I want to propose something to all of you, whether you're conservative or progressive or whatever. Neither of these two motherfuckers really truly give a shit about Breonna Taylor, and I'm going to explain to you why, okay? This is right now the progressive perspective. By the way, she's a DA, so I fucking guarantee you, if she was put in the same spot as the other DA, she would have ruled the same way that they did, okay? So keep that in mind. This is a progressive perspective. This is the conservative. And I generally align with the progressive perspective. Breonna Taylor got fucked, right? But nobody... See, the problem is that the cops did fuck up. But if we take it up a notch, right? If we take it from, you know... The biggest issue in the Breonna Taylor situation was that the administration, not the Trump administration, but the police administration and the court administration fucked up, and nobody gives a shit. Which, like, the police officers on the ground fucked up, but like, you know what the bigger issue was? The warrant was fake. The warrant was based on the false pretense that that the post office had confirmed that there were drugs in her packages. Didn't exist. The judge signed off on it. The higher ups in the police department proposed that bullshit information. There's no laws or standards to make you wear a body cam, which would have been massive because body cam is instant regulation and transparency. We don't know how long they knocked for. I know that we didn't necessarily have to knock, but we don't know how long they knocked for or how loud they knocked for. They have to announce themselves. We don't know how long they announced themselves, how loud they announced themselves, or if they even did in general. We only had 1 out of 12 witnesses claim that they actually did knock or that they actually announced themselves. There's so many things that could have happened if the system wasn't fundamentally flawed. And that's the problem. And neither one of these motherfuckers is going to talk about it. She's going to blame the cops. He's going to blame Breonna Taylor. Or if they don't, then those are the general perspectives. But nobody gives a fuck. The judge should be fired. The officer or whoever higher up who proposed this false information should be fired. The police union president even came out and said that never should have happened on her. She was low priority. Do you understand what I'm saying? The problem is the system. We don't necessarily need to agree on the ground floor of what happened that night. It was fucked up, and I completely side with Breonna Taylor, but we don't have to agree with that. We need to agree there's a fucked up system, and neither one of these motherfuckers care. She would have done the same goddamn thing if she was the district attorney that the district attorney did when this happened. That's the reality of the situation. And she's not going to say it, and no one's going to give her fucking shit for it, even though she deserves it.
I believe so.
Okay, and I'm just saying that we have a problem with like district attorneys. They're going to suck off cops every single time because district attorneys work with police officers on a daily basis, so they're going to gravitate towards defending police officers every single time.
And I've talked with Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, and her family, and her family deserves justice. She was a beautiful young woman. She had as her life goal to become a nurse, and she wanted to become an EMT to first learn what's going on out on the street so she could then become a nurse and save lives. And her life was taken unjustifiably and tragically and violently. And it brings me to, you know.
And part of the system is that every single time police officers fuck up with this, they get off. And part of that's the district attorney's fault, who just defend the police officers every time. This is such a massive system issue, not just from a governmental rule perspective, but from a social rule. There's such a social standard in police departments and in relation to police officers and district attorneys, which it's so shitty, so shitty.
The 8 minutes and 46 seconds that America witnessed.
Yeah, now we're talking about George Floyd.
During which an American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer.
And again, as a district attorney, Camilla, you would have defended him.
And people around our country,
This is a bizarre pivot. Listen, the reality...
every race, of every
This is a decent
age,
take
of
so far, though,
every
from her,
gender,
in her defense.
perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, arm
So-
in arm, fighting.
So far she's promoting this idea that, like, hey, maybe it wasn't necessarily racially biased, but, like, there was an issue in the police department. That's fair. I'm going to give her credit for that. I'm shitting on her quite a bit, so I'm going to give her credit for that she's proposing it as, like, a police brutality issue, not necessarily a black issue, which is a fair take.
Fighting for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal justice under law. And I was a part of those peaceful protests. And I believe strongly that, first of all, we are never going to condone violence, but we always must fight for the values that we hold dear, including the fight to achieve our ideals. And that's why Joe Biden and I have said on this subject, look, and I'm a former career prosecutor. I know what I'm talking about. Bad cops are
bet
bad
you
for good
do.
cops. We need reform of our...
But who are the bad cops, right? The ones in power are the ones that are propagating this buddy-buddy bullshit system that doesn't require... Like, let's be honest. If, like, nobody picked up the George Floyd situation, do you think that the police department would have, like, arrested the police officer? No, they would have swept it under the rug. So, like, we don't keep that in mind either. Like, this, people don't fucking care unless the media covers it. And frankly, the media only covers it. The only time we give a fuck about black people as the media is when there's political power to be gained. Every time. Even the Civil Rights Act. We only did that because we looked hypocritical when we were trying to, you know, push democracy during the Vietnam War. And we were like, well, the world's criticizing us for literally having black people who aren't equal. Guess we have to make them equal. It wasn't because we liked black people. As a country, we didn't give a fuck about black people. The civil rights movement was 100% because we looked hypocritical. That's it. The only time there's any advancement for black people in the United States is when somebody has the way to benefit from it. And shitting on Trump is a benefit for progressives, so progressives took it and they ran with George Floyd. It was fucked up. He never should have died, but it was police brutality. It wasn't a race issue, but they pushed it as one because, hey, guys, we can benefit from it this time. That's why people say the Democratic Party tokenizes black people, honestly. And you want to know what? Honestly, the Republicans aren't any better. They simply just don't give a shit. Like, no, both sides don't care about black people. I'm just being honest with you. All right? That's why we're not seeing real solutions. The only time, and like reparations is just a terrible idea in my opinion, but the only time you saw someone talk about reparations for like a fucking day, and they're like, well, will people like this one? No, they don't like it. Nobody was really going to force it. It wasn't going to help them gain anything, so they dropped it.
Policing in America and our criminal justice system, which is why Joe and I will immediately...
How is police brutality not a race issue? I didn't say police brutality isn't necessarily race. First of all, yeah, it's happening more to black people, of course, but police brutality is an everybody issue. Okay, and in the George Floyd situation, it wasn't race motivated. You have to keep that in mind, okay? It's still police brutality. That's what I'm referring to specifically.
Ban chokeholds and carotid holds. George Floyd would be alive today if we did that. We will require a national register.
George Floyd would have been alive today if, like, we weren't totally okay. If, like, any of the officers said, yo, you should probably not kneel on the back of his fucking neck. Like, that's a social issue. That's a social police issue where, like, nobody questioned this dude. Insane. You want to know why? Because if they did, then, like, they would have gotten reprimanded because then it wouldn't have hit media attention. Do you see how this is going?
For police officers who break the law.
People are saying, yeah, he was on drugs. For sure, man, he was on drugs. And if he had died of a heart attack on drugs and there was no situation of him being kneeled on for 8.5 minutes or 9 minutes, or it's 8 minutes, I don't know, whatever. You get my point. Then fine. But, like, that's not what happened. He was on drugs and the police killed him. It's their job to not kill people. Like, let's be honest. He was being rambunctious, sure. He's being annoying, fine. But that's the police's job. They get paid rather well to deal with it. They get rather good benefits. It's their job. And honestly, we shouldn't be constantly excusing people who it's their literal job, okay? That's their job. I'm just being honest. Okay, and you keep saying he would have died of an overdose. There, you can't substantiate that because they kneeled on the back of his neck. If they didn't, then you would have had an argument. But since that existed, you don't, because you know what? If it was anyone else, they probably would have died to it anyway. You think that a police officer kneeling on the back of your neck for like 8 minutes wouldn't kill you? That's the problem. He just shouldn't have done it. And if George Floyd still died, then you know what? You're right.
We will, on the issue
But
of
there's
criminal
no way that it didn't exacerbate the issue already going on.
justice reform, get rid of private prisons and cash bail, and
Thank
we
you.
will decriminalize marijuana, and
Thank you, Senator Harris.
we will expunge the records of those who have
Thank you,
been
Senator
convicted
Harris.
of marijuana. This is
Thank
the
you,
time
Senator
for
Harris.
leadership on a tragic issue.
Again, I understand you guys are continuously reinforcing the autopsy said he had enough to kill him. Anyone would have died from having their neck kneeled on. There was like some white dude who had the same situation happen to him. The difference is the media didn't give a fuck about that guy. It's going to kill you. It's going to kill you. If they hadn't kneeled on the back of his neck, he might be alive. And if he did still die, then we couldn't attribute to police brutality. But effectively what you're saying is that like it's okay to kneel on the back of people's necks is basically what you guys are saying. Like, come on, you got to keep this in context here. It never should have happened.
Senator Harris,
Of
your time
unarmed
is up.
black people in America. who have
Thank you,
been
Senator
killed.
Harris. Vice President Pence, let me pose the same question to you. In the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks for the loss of any innocent American life.
Just for context, my chat's talking about marijuana. If our standard is alcohol, the marijuana falls below that standard, so it should be legal.
And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system, a grand jury that refused the evidence.
That's the problem, is
it
the
really is
justice
remarkable.
system that signed off on the fucking false warrant. The warrant based on a false pretext.
Well, that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator. I think
What's funny about that shot is, like, you know, if Kamala was in the situation, she would have been totally, like, would have went with it.
Look, and with regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. And justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting that followed. I mean, it really is
Here's the thing with the rioting and looting, and this is such a complex situation. So I know a lot of you guys will be like, oh no, there's no excuse for the rioting and looting, and I get that. I understand where you're coming from, but you have to understand something. I already made the assertion that this wasn't a black issue, but we need to acknowledge that there is a way that black people are being treated like shit. Okay, I'm going to use Michael Brown as a reference, right? Because I know you guys say Michael Brown, he deserved to be taken up by the cop. Okay, we're going to go based off the Department of Justice report. Validated the police officer's response to Michael Brown charging him, right? We all acknowledge that. However, that same Department of Justice report, nobody likes talking about this, also came out and proved that the police department in that area was violating the constitutional rights of black Americans in that area. First, Fourth, and 14th Amendment rights. Okay? There is a way, and none of this would have been found out if this Michael Brown situation, if that never happened, the police department would still be continuing to do things such as over-ticketing. All right? Which is basically a flat tax on poor people, right? Because it's the same price. If you're rich and you get a ticket, who cares? You pay for it. You make $10,000 a fucking week. You think a $50 ticket or a $200 ticket or even a $500 ticket really means anything to you? No. All right? The reality is that there is a way that police officers do infringe on the constitutional rights of black Americans. It happens. For the media, this was a weaponization of black issues. For black Americans in that area, this was them having the ability to express their frustrations. Is rioting and looting good? No. But the reality is like, what would you have done if you've been feeling like you've been fucking oppressed for your entire life by a broken system? Do you think that you would sit there and take it? No, because you're a strong person. I don't like the idea of rioting and looting, but let's be honest. When black people were kneeling for the national anthem, nobody cared. You said, "Oh, do it somewhere else," right? You don't want it. That's the thing. Do it somewhere. Oh, that's not appropriate. And now that there's rioting and looting, you're like, this isn't appropriate. So what a peaceful protest of kneeling is peaceful. You just don't want to see it. And that's the problem. Is it's not that you don't like the type of protesting. It's that you don't want to see it. And if you're not seeing protests, you don't give a fuck. The point of a protest is for you to see it. Do you think Colin Kaepernick is riding a wave? Maybe. I don't care. But the movement itself matters. And this whole argument of, oh, keep it out of sports, then why the fuck are you all jerking off that one UFC fighter who doesn't stop talking about Trump? Just in the way that he should be able to say, I love Trump, is the same way that people should be able to protest if they're athletes. If you're an athlete, if you work hard, and if you're in that social space and you want to utilize that, be my guest. I'm just saying, guys. I'm sorry that it makes some people uncomfortable that you see protests, but life is uncomfortable. So wrap your minds around that.
Astonishing. Flora Westbrook is with us here tonight in Salt Lake City.
Don't ban Shaddy, guys. Don't. He said I'm fat, so I don't care if my opinion doesn't matter. That's fine. Don't ban him for that. He gets the right to express himself, unless he gets like incredibly like racist or something. You keep him in here, but just like he's entitled to express his opinion. He's just peacefully protesting in here.
Just a few weeks ago, I stood at what used to be her salon. It was burned to the ground by rioters and looters. And Flora is still trying to put her life back together. And I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that America is systemically racist.
It is.
And that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities.
But here's the thing, man. It is. And Joe Biden is part of that systemic racism. Like, bro, this guy was like all for like the war on drugs and shit. Like, Biden's part of it, man. I think that even Camila is, But like, yeah, there's systemic. Listen, you can make the argument systemic racism is illegal. That's fine. That's totally fine. But the social, we always talk about governmental law. That's what I talk about a lot. Governmental rules versus social rules. Governmental rules, it's legal to be racist, right? Racism is illegal. When a systemic racism is illegal, right? But socially, we're not quite there yet. It still exists. We need to understand the echoing impacts of it. And when we look at police officers being having like some kind of an implicit bias, let me reframe your thought around it, because most people go, well, police officers are just inherently racist. Let me restructure your thought here, so that maybe you'll understand. Systemic racism has denied some Black Americans in impoverished Black areas of opportunities, right? And it has created a culture around committing crimes out of the necessity to facilitate their own lives. Anybody would do things illegally if it meant staying alive. We're humans at nature, and we're animals in nature, and we would all live. Okay, and there's a lack of opportunity to particular people, and so they're going to do things to allow them to live first. That's the reality of the situation. Now, of course, crime is a net loss for society, so police officers have to stop that crime. What happens is, since that systemic racism has denied opportunities to those Black Americans and caused them to have a culture in those particular communities that dislikes police officers and commits more crime, police officers look at them and go, okay, these people are causing more problems. I don't like these people. It is basic human nature. Okay? So that's why police officers, whether they're Black or white, have an implicit bias against Black people, because due to systemic racism, Black people impoverished Black Americans have a culture that causes more crime. You don't have to think it's individual police department. There is a history of racism in police departments, but if you want to ignore that, that's fine. But when we look it up here, if we look at it to this point today, that's why police officers have an implicit bias against Black people. Police officers, not white police officers, all police officers, okay?
Is a great insult to the men and women.
Oh, there's the fly. There's the wild flyers. We got it, guys. We found it. Wild flyer. There he is, the little wild flyer. There it is. I've been waiting the whole fucking thing to be like wildfires. You mean like this? I thought it was sooner, but that was like an hour ago.
Women who serve in law enforcement, and I want everyone to know who puts on the uniform of law enforcement every day. And President Trump and I stand with you.
Okay.
And it is remarkable that
Fucking
that when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform bill, brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats, Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided new accountability, new resources. But we don't have to.
I'm not entirely sure of what it is that they're talking, like the specific bill. So I imagine that it was just simply not enough, because that's a lot of times both sides will do this on an issue. They'll like give just a little bit, but they know they won't take it. So when the other side doesn't take it, they're like, look, they don't really want this thing. Also, everybody calling Mike Pence racist. If he was racist, then why does a black fly hang out with him?
To choose between supporting law
Checkmate,
enforcement,
liberal.
improving public safety, and supporting our African American
Thank you,
neighbors
Vice
and all of our
President.
minorities. Under President Trump's leadership,
Thank you,
we'll
Vice President
always
Pence.
stand with law enforcement, and we'll do what we've done
Vice
from day
President Pence,
one, and
thank
that is
you. Your time
improve
is
the
up.
lives of African Americans.
Thank you, Vice
Record
President
unemployment, record
Vice
investments in
President Pence, your time
education,
is
and we'll
up.
fight for school choice for all of our
Thank you.
minorities.
Ah, school choice sucks balls. Fuck you. Honestly, all jokes aside, school choice is dog shit. It's nice that he just threw it in there without contestment. School choice is dumb, guys. Okay? Makes no sense. The theoretical aspect of that is, hey, this school sucks, this school's good, let the people that go to the shitty school go to the good school. They all go to that school. Now there's double population in the good school. The shitty school just doesn't exist anymore. Makes more sense to work on the shitty schools themselves than put people in better schools. Makes no sense. Right? Because not only are you overcrowding the good school, but then also how the fuck are you going to get your kid from your area to that area without increasing the cost of bus services?
Vice
I'd like to respond.
Senator Harris.
I will not sit here and be lectured by the Vice President on what it means to enforce the laws of our country. I am the only one on this stage.
Well, Camila has a bit of a history of also propagating systemic racism, to my understanding.
Personally prosecuted everything from child sexual assault to homicide. I'm the only one on this stage who has prosecuted the big banks for taking advantage
And a lot of people going to jail for minor drug problems. That's where it really stems from. And that's the argument, is one of those, that's systemic racism.
of America's homeowners. I'm the only one on this stage who prosecuted for profit.
Although, just for context, I got to be a little nicer here. I'm shitting on her a little too much. You know, if they don't support those policies anymore because they understand that those were bad policies, then like if we have to afford them the idea of cancel culture, of like educating them first. So if they're educated on their wrongdoings, then like you can make the argument that's like, okay, like they learned from it. So I'm giving her too much shit. Trump, he's
for
asleep.
taking advantage of our veterans.
He's nodding off. He's having a bad dream. He's like, oh, Trump, don't touch me there.
And the reality of this is that we are talking about an election in 27 days, where last week the President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Not true.
And
Well, it's a little true. The problem is that, like, you know, if I'm going to give Trump the benefit of the doubt, is like he was so caught up with like the, oh, move aside, stand aside thing. Like he didn't condemn it enough. Then that seemed to be a rallying cry to like the Proud Boys to be like, yeah. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, that he came out and condemned white supremacy again after the fact.
Not true.
So
it wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed, stand back, stand by. And this is a part of a pattern of Donald Trump's.
oh
He
no,
called
the fly's
Mexicans
gone.
rapists and criminals.
Again, that's out of context. And like the next breath, he said that like that they're not all bad people. He was talking about people coming across the border that were basically like drug peddlers. Bad choice of words, but we know that he didn't even enforce that idea right after he said it. Come on.
He
He's specifically talking about MS-13.
instituted as his first act a Muslim ban. He on the issue of Charlottesville, where people were peacefully protesting the need for racial justice, where a young woman was killed.
Sure.
And on the other side, there were neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches, shouting racial epithets, anti-Semitic slurs. And Donald Trump, when asked about it, said there were fine people on both sides.
So, like, we know that that's in reference to the fact that during that, like, it's a protest over a monument, that there were people who wanted to take it down who were protesting and people who didn't, right? And then there was also, and of course, on the side of people who didn't, there were some, like, fucking, like, supremacist groups, like, in my opinion, terrorist organizations, effectively, of white supremacists. But, like, there were still people that weren't white supremacists that wanted to keep the monuments, right? And that's what he meant when he said that. And he even condemned white supremacist groups right after that. So it's like we try so hard to take him intentionally out of context.
This is who we have as the president of the United States. And America, you deserve better. Joe Biden will be a president who brings our country together.
Senator Harris.
And recognizes the beauty in our diversity and the fact that we
Senator
all
Harris,
have so much more in common than what separates us.
Vice President.
Interesting point from Kamala Harris about how we have a lot more in common than separates us. I agree, for sure. The problem is that a lot of progressives are pushing very toxic. They're pushing very toxic identity politics on the foundation of very logical, solid theories. Like critical race theory, in theory, great. The implementation of hyper focusing on your differences, that's kind of a problem. And like there's a toxicity in progressives that's taking identity politics too far.
President Pence, let me give you a minute.
Like the way it should work is like you should acknowledge somebody's for their identities, but you shouldn't victimize them for it. And there very much is like a victim complex that's being stoked in the progressives.
To respond.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that very much. You know, I think this is one of the things that makes people dislike the media so much in this country, Susan. That you selectively edit, just like Senator Harris did.
He's not wrong.
Comments that President Trump and I and others on our side of the aisle make. I mean, Senator Harris conveniently omitted, after the president made comments about people on either side of the debate over monuments, he condemned the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and has done so repeatedly.
He has.
You're concerned that he does.
Just at last debate, it was fucking shocking and alarming that he just wouldn't say I don't like white supremacy. It was weird. Like see, a lot of people are like, yeah, he's done it before, so why should he do it again? My thing is if you've done it before, why are you so afraid to do it again? And like the way he came off about it was just not good enough, you know. And I think he since like came out and said, hey, I hate white supremacists, because unfortunately the Proud Boys took that as a fucking rallying cry. Did I say white boys or the Proud Boys? You get what I'm saying. But like, you know, Trump should have said it there too.
Doesn't condemn neo-Nazis. President Trump has Jewish grandchildren. His daughter and son-in-law are Jewish.
That's nice.
This is a president who respects and cherishes
all
of the American people.
I just want to say to that point, like the point basically is that Donald Trump doesn't care about identities, which I think is generally true. I think that Trump just doesn't like poor people. I've said it before and I'll say it again, okay?
But you talk about having personally prosecuted. I'm glad you brought up your record, Senator.
Thank you.
But I really need to make this point. When you were DA,
so make it faster.
In San Francisco, when you left office,
this is ready for this, guys?
African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug
offenses. Are you ready?
Offenses
Are you
than
ready?
Hispanics. When you were attorney.
Did you just hear that? Did you just hear what Pence said? None of you caught it. None of you, and not a single one of you caught it. I'm telling you right now, what he just did was he acknowledged systemic racism. He just acknowledged systemic racism in her fucking area. He's like, hey, black people were being disproportionately targeted by the fucking government, basically, by the police system, and you were part of it. But 10 minutes ago, he said systemic racism doesn't exist. He basically said that. This motherfucker just said systemic racism doesn't exist, and then he just proved that it did by dragging Kamala Harris through it. That's what happened, okay? You acknowledge that because when it's convenient for Pence, he acknowledges systemic racism. Just like when it's convenient for Kamala, she denies that she ever took part of it. But then he's like, doesn't exist. But you just said it did. If black people were disproportionately targeted by the police in that way, That's systemic racism, buddy. That's what it is. Either that or your criticism of her is just like, black people are violent or something. But it's not. You're trying to drag her for that. So, you nay-nayed yourself, Pence. Poggers.
Attorney General of California,
Thank you,
you
Vice President.
increased the disproportionate incarceration of
Thank
blacks
you.
in California.
He's still doing it.
You did
He's saying it
nothing on
exists.
criminal justice reform in California. You didn't lift a finger
Thank
to
you.
pass the First Step Act on Capitol Hill. I mean, the reality is your record
Thank
speaks
you,
for
Vice
itself.
President
President
Pence.
Trump and I have fought for criminal
my
justice
God.
reform.
Thank you, Vice President
We've fought for
Pence.
educational choice and opportunities for African Americans, all of our
Thank you,
minorities.
sir.
He kind of has he has an argument there because, like, whether you like it or not, Trump socially dog shit for racial tensions, fucking horrible. Policy wise, overall, don't like it, would go against it, but lower black unemployment, higher black wages overall. He's got an argument to be made that he's actually making a real difference. He's trying to get people out of, again, like, it's not necessarily him, but his administration is still getting people out of prison for bullshit charges that Camila put them in there for. He kind of has a point. I'm just saying, guys. I'm just saying.
And we'll do it for 4
Thank you. You know, there is no more important issue than the final issue that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is the issue of the election
But
itself.
Susan, he attacked my record. I would like another
So then you can defend it on your time. The both of you need to shut the hell up, though Pence is talking far more than her.
opportunity to respond.
Let me give you 30 seconds because we're running out of time.
I appreciate that. First of all, having served as the Attorney General of the state of California, the work that I did is a model of what our nation needs to do, and we will be able to do under a Joe Biden presidency.
I don't know about
Our-
that one, ma'am.
Our
You put a lot of people in jail for drugs, nonviolent drug charges, no? Am I right about that? I feel like I'm right about that.
agenda includes what this administration has failed to do. It will be about not only instituting a ban on chokeholds and carotid holds.
Thank you.
Not only,
Thank you, Senator.
I would
There's the dog in the background. You hear it?
like to go through,
These are points that you made earlier.
They're in a
the
fucking
hour, and I
barn.
want to talk about the election itself before we have to.
but I want to talk about the connection between what Joe and I will do and my record,
Well, your record kind of sucks. So
which
it's,
includes I was the first statewide officer to institute a requirement that my agents would wear body cameras and keep them on full time.
That's
We were the
nice.
first to initiate a requirement
Fucking
that there
dog.
would be a training for law enforcement on implicit bias because,
Dude,
yes,
I'm voting
Joe Biden
fly
and I
and dog.
recognize that implicit bias does exist, Mr. Vice President, contrary to what you may believe. We did the work of instituting reforms that were about investing in reentry. This is the work that we have done and the work we will do going forward. And again, I will not be
fuck is
lectured
this dog?
by the Vice President on our record of what we have done in terms of law enforcement and keeping our communities safe and a commitment to reforming the criminal justice system of America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. And I'd like to pose the
Somebody asked if systemic racism doesn't exist, why did Trump create the First Step Act? In Donald Trump's defense, he kind of acknowledged it when he had the conversation with George fucking Papadopoulos, or whatever the hell his name is, in Pennsylvania. He was like, yeah, systemic racism, yep, it's a thing. Pence doesn't think it's a thing.
first. I'd like you to respond first to the question on our final topic, the election itself. President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election.
He has said
If your
that.
ticket wins and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what steps would you and Vice President Biden then take? What would happen next?
So, Trump did basically said, kind of been like, yeah, if we lose, we're not losing. It's not good. At the very least, he's rallying people up he's setting up the stage of it's a conspiracy to get me out of the White House. He's constantly promoting this idea. And I really just don't see it. And I think that he's getting ready to lose and then fucking stage a fucking, what is it, haiku, whatever. And him and his supporters going to be very, very, it's going to be intense.
You have 2 minutes.
So I'll tell you, Joe and I are, I think, particularly proud of the coalition that we've built around our campaign. We probably have one of the broadest coalitions of folks that you've ever seen in a presidential race. Of course, we have the support
Yes,
of
excuse me.
Democrats, but also independents
Stays a coup. A coup? I don't know. I'm fucking dumb and old, so I get a pass.
and Republicans. In fact, 7 members of President George W. Bush's cabinet are supporting our ticket. We have the support
Yeah, because I think a lot of Republicans are like, this motherfucker's out of his mind.
of Colin Powell, Cindy McCain, John Kasich, over 500 generals, retired generals, and former national security experts and advisors are supporting our campaign. And I believe they are doing that because they know that Joe Biden has a deep, deep-seated commitment to fight for our democracy.
No, you know why they're voting for him? Because they think Trump is that bad. It's not because Biden's that good. They just think Trump is that bad. Also, Biden's more moderate than like progressive, so they're probably like, yeah, he's not so bad.
And to fight for the integrity of our democracy and to bring integrity back to the White House. And so we believe in the American people. We believe in our democracy. And here's what I'd like to say to everybody. Vote. Please vote. Vote early. Come up with a plan to vote. Go to iwillvote.com. You can also go to joebiden.com. We have it within our power in these next 27 days to make the decision about what will be the course of our country for the next 4 years. And it is within our power, and if we use our vote and we use our voice, we will win. And we will not let anyone subvert our democracy with what Donald Trump has been doing, as he did on the debate stage last week, when again in front of 70 million people, he openly attempted to suppress the vote. Joe Biden, on the other hand, on that same debate stage, because clearly Donald Trump doesn't think he can run on a record because it's a failed record, Joe Biden on that stage said, hey, just please vote. So I'll repeat what Joe said. Please vote.
In Joe Biden's defense, Joe Biden was like, listen, if I lose, I lose. He did pretty much say that on the debate stage. Trump, not so much.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Pence, President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If Vice President Biden is declared the winner and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what would be your role and responsibility as Vice President? What would you personally do? You have 2 minutes.
Let's see what you say.
Well, Susan, first and foremost, I think we're going to win this election.
That's great. Now move on. What do you think? What are you going to do if Trump says not moving?
While Joe Biden and Kamala Harris rattle off the litany of the establishment in Washington, D.C., an establishment that Joe Biden's been a part of for 47 years, President Donald Trump has launched a movement of everyday Americans from every walk of life.
But is he going to leave if he's voted out?
I have every confidence that those same Americans that delivered that
But is he gonna
victory
leave?
in 2016, they see this president's record where we rebuild our military, we revived our economy through tax cuts and rolling back regulations,
He's just rambling.
fighting for fair trade, unleashing American energy. We appointed conservatives to our federal courts at every level. And we stood with the men and women of law enforcement every single day. And I think that movement of Americans has only grown stronger in the last
But will
4 years.
Trump leave if
When
he's
you talk
voted
about
out?
accepting the outcome of the election,
There we go.
I must tell you,
Okay.
Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election.
Goodness. I suppose that's true. But Biden even said he'd walk off. So
It's
come on.
amazing. When Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign.
Sure, that's true. Listen, to the spying thing, I think you guys need to understand here, right? That there were some concerns as to why they spied, okay? Just, I'm going to bring this up. Keep it in mind, okay? There was an instance where, like, a Russian lawyer, a Russian-linked lawyer, met with Donald Trump Jr. in the Trump Tower, I believe it was, right? At first, Trump said it never happened. Then they said they were talking about a Russian adoption program. Then Trump finally said, yeah, we're looking for basically evidence on Hillary Clinton, like how would you call it? Like, you know, whatever. It wasn't illegal per se, but it was uncomfortable. It was like election evidence, like, hey, you know, whatever. It was there. Trump was associating with Russia in an illegal way. I don't think so, but I would say enough for them to say, well, what's going on here? Now, maybe that's a bad take, but honestly, I understand why they did it. Okay.
I mean, there were documents released this week that the CIA actually made a referral to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And of course, we've all seen the avalanche, what you put the country through for the better part of 3 years until it was found that there was no obstruction, no collusion.
Well, okay, so to that point, like, you know, they were forcing it so hard, so constantly that it lost all of, like, any anything. Like, even if Trump did collude with Russia, which I don't think is necessarily substantiated, nobody fucking cared when they wouldn't shut the fuck up about it for the entire time. Everything Trump did, they was like, oh, impeach, impeach, impeach. So, like, nobody cared anymore. So, you know what? I'm going to give him that one, to be honest with you. As far as the impeachment proceedings, I want you guys to understand that, like, that... see, if the media was fucking honest with you, you would have heard, like, the real thing. Basically, like, yes, Trump basically leveraged money to the Ukraine, trying to get them to, dig in on Joe Biden. He did do that. Now, you may say, like, well, Joe Biden should have been digged in on. Then why did Trump wait until right when Biden announced he was going to run to fucking withhold funding for the Ukraine to ask them to look into shit, right? That's the reality. Now, if you would have been paying attention to the media, well, no, not even that. If the media was being honest with you, you would have saw that, like, the most logical conservatives were saying, hey, listen, we know he fucked up, but it's not impeachable, and we can move on. I don't know if I necessarily agree, but you know what? That's fair. That's kind of a fair assertion. But yeah, but like we didn't see that because you know what they were running? The news media, the CNN was running because Donald Trump made fun of Mayor Bloomberg for being short. So we didn't get to hear that.
Case closed. And then Senator Harris, you and your colleagues in the Congress tried to impeach the President of the United States over a phone call.
I need a pee too.
And now Hillary Clinton has actually said to Joe Biden that in her words, under no circumstances should he concede the election. So let me just say, I think we're going to win this election.
But again, like Joe Biden had said, like, hey, if I lose, I lose. I'll walk out. But he still hasn't answered the question, will Trump leave if he's voted out? Because he's spinning kind of a conspiracy. He's spinning a conspiracy theory that, like, he's going to lose based on voter fraud and whatnot.
President Trump and I are fighting every day in courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules and creating this universal mail-in voting that will create a massive opportunity for voter fraud.
Listen, I agree that universal mail-in voting, it's not as good as like in-person voting. I don't believe in electronic voting. I don't believe in mail-in voting unless it's like necessary. But we're in a pandemic and it's necessary.
We have a free and fair election. We know we're going to have confidence in it. And I believe in all my heart that President Donald Trump's going to be reelected for 4 more years.
You know, I've written all the questions that I've asked tonight, but for the final question of the debate, I'd like to read a question that someone else wrote. The Utah Debate Commission asked students in the state to write essays about what they would like to ask you.
Silly.
And I want to close tonight's debate with the question posed by Brecklin Brown.
Brecklin, that's the name of the dog.
He's an 8th grader.
And I don't know what kind of a parent would name their daughter Brecklin. It's not even a great son name, but you're going to name your daughter Brecklin? Weird. I don't know. I think that's the name of the dog, though, that was in the background barking before.
At Springville Junior High in Springville, Utah. And here's what she wrote, quote, "When I watch the news, all I see is arguing between Democrats and Republicans.
Do you think she really wrote this?
I watch the news, all I see is citizen fighting against citizen. When I watch the news, all I see are 2 candidates from opposing parties trying to tear each other down. If our leaders can't get along, how are the citizens supposed to get along?" And then she added, "Your examples could make all the difference to bring us together," end quote. So to each of you,
you want to know something?
I'd like you to take 1 minute and respond to Brecklin. Vice President Pence,
Here's my response first, okay? So, you want to know why we're so polarized and divided all the fucking time? The biggest reason why, right? Part of it certainly is like money in politics, where like corporations get to run fucking politicians. But do you want to know why we have this big fucking issue right now? It's fucking media corporations that are incredibly biased towards their own side, who act as a mouthpiece for politicians instead of holding those politicians accountable. That's why, okay? That's the reason why. It's certainly their fault as well. But you know whose fault? It's the fucking media is supposed to be our representation and holding them accountable, and instead they're a fucking mouthpiece for people. So that's why. So you know what? Go fuck yourself, media. And this woman, CNN, this is right here, right? CNN, how the fuck do I do this? They're part of it. They're part of it. They're part of it. You're part of the problem, CNN. Fox is part of the problem. MSNBC, ABC, maybe ABC not as much. All part of the problem. Okay? Right? I understand biases when it comes to like news organizations, right? Like there's nothing wrong with a conservative bias perspective. There's nothing wrong with hearing information from a conservative, factual information, and then them giving their conservative spin on it. I have no problem with that. I have no problem with a progressive hearing something and giving their progressive spin. But a spin isn't this huge thing, right? This is what it means. Hey, let me give you an instance of how this should work out. Let's pretend I'm conservative. Hey, we have an issue. The president fucking Trump is talking about school choice. And then the conservative says, oh, he's talking about school choice. I think that's a good idea because it'll, whatever, make schools better, right? The liberal person or the progressive goes like, oh, I don't think it's a good idea, but this is what they're doing. However, nowadays, it's like, oh, Trump said school choice. Well, you want to know what, guys? Trump's racist. That's how this works now. Disingenuous fucking representation from the media on people that they don't like and being a mouthpiece for people that are on their side.
You have 1 minute.
Brecklin, it's a wonderful question. And let me just commend you for taking an interest in public life. I started following the news when I was very young.
Mm-hmm. Was it as fucked up back then? No. It was pretty decent back when you were young.
And in America, we believe in a free and open exchange of debate.
Okay.
And we celebrate that.
And lying.
And it's how we've created literally the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world. But I would tell you that don't assume that what you're seeing on your local news networks is synonymous with the American people.
It kind of is, because you're fucking stoking the American people. If I wanted to read really hard into that, what he's really saying is like, hey, just because you see us arguing this way on TV doesn't really mean that we are. We're just playing a game and we know it, but you don't. That's his argument, basically.
You know, I look at the relationship between Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late justice who we just lost from the Supreme Court, and the late Justice Antonin Scalia. They were on polar opposites on the Supreme Court of the United States. One very liberal, one very conservative. But what's been learned since her passing was the two of them and their families were the very closest of friends.
Yeah, because they understand discourse, but you motherfuckers don't.
I mean, here in America, we can disagree. We can debate vigorously, as Senator Harris and I have on this stage tonight. But when the debate is over, we come together as
yeah, but it's the problem isn't like what's behind the scenes. The problem is when you debate, two of you lie to each other and dodge questions, and then you force people to take fucking two stupid asshole sides and defend two dumb assholes. That's what it comes down to.
Americans. And that's what people do in big cities and small towns all across this country. So I just want to encourage you, Brecklin. I want to tell you that we're going to work every day to have government as good as our people. And the American people each and every day love a good debate. We love a good argument, but we always come
we love how entertaining it is to argue
together and are always there for one another.
Thank you,
in
Vice
times of
President.
need, and we've especially learned that
Thank you,
through
Mr.
the
Vice President.
difficulties of this year.
Senator Harris, what would you say to Brecklin?
First of all,
No cap. The first thing I'd say is Brecklin, your fucking parents hate you with that name.
I love hearing from our young leaders. And when I hear her words, when I hear your words, Brecklin, I know our future is bright because it is that perspective on who we are and who we should be that is a sign of leadership.
Could you just imagine like the fucking vice president was like, it's like Brecklin, your name sucks to like whatever, however many millions of people listening, and then then there gets ridiculed in school forever. They would never live that down.
Leadership, and is something we should all aspire to be. And that, that brings me to Joe. Joe Biden, one of the reasons that Joe decided to run for president is after Charlottesville, which we talked about earlier.
Right.
It so troubled him and upset him like it did all of us, that there was that kind of hate and division. What propelled Joe to run for president was to see that over the course of the last 4 years, what Brecklin described has been happening. Joe has a long-standing
His eye is so
reputation of working
bloodshot.
across the aisle,
Pence's left eye.
working in a bipartisan way. And that's what he's going to do as president. Joe Biden has a history of lifting people up and fighting for their dignity. You mean you have to know Joe's story to know that Joe has known pain, he has known suffering, and he has known love. And so, Brecklin, when you think about the future, I do believe the future is bright. And it will be because of your leadership, and it will be because we fight for each person's voice through their vote, and we get engaged in this election because you have the ability through your
These two
work
should get
and
engaged.
through eventually your vote
Thank you,
to
Senator
determine
Harris.
the future of our country and what its leadership looks
We
like.
did it, guys.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Thank you, Vice President Pence. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hold on, before we end this, I want to try something really quick. See if I can do this really quickly. Can I flip this around? Like flip it? They love each other. That's all I wanted to do. I thought I could rotate. Whatever.
Tonight. We want to thank also.
Nah, I don't care. Okay, guys, very good. I gotta take a big
Thank you so
wee-wee.
much, guys, to all my Patreons, and a special shout out to my Papa XL Patreons. Without all you guys, I would just be some fat dude screaming into a microphone. So thank you so much, guys. Mwah. I love you all. I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.